Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee for the 12th of June. Mr. Scott, any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. So I've received apologies from Councillor Liz Noble, Councillor Rob Lee is subbing in her place, and from Councillor David Whitcroft. Councillor Helen Whitcroft is subbing. Councillor David Whitcroft is attending as a contributor and I believe has an interest, so that's why he's a contributor today.
Thank you. And actually, before we start, I noticed we've got members of the public. Can you do because I can't remember it, the fire drill information, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. There will be no fire drill today. The fire alarm is allowed continuous ring. If the fire alarm rings, please leave the building promptly and calmly using the stairs next to the lift if possible. The fire escape in the council chamber should only be used as a last resort. Do not stop to gather belongings and do not use the lift. The evacuation point is at street level in the Knoll Road multi-storey car park, and the assembly point is indicated by a green sign. Do not leave the assembly point until you're told it is safe to do so. And for those in attendance with limited mobility in case of evacuation, make yourself known to myself and the chair of the meeting.
That's why I can't remember it, because it's so long. Okay, item 2, declarations of interest. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I think I have 2 declarations of interest. So the first one is I have a child at Lakeside School, which I think may come up in the discussions later. And then the second one is I'm a member of the Liberal Democrats and receive money from the local party for campaigning. And my understanding is that someone mentioned in the papers, Mr. Steve Knight's threatened legal action against the local Liberal Democrat Party. So I think that would perhaps be a personal interest.
Thank you. So, Councillor Will.
Thank you. I also have the latter interest that Councillor Lee just declared. Thank you.
And anyone else? So we're going to okay. Councillor O'Mahony.
Thank you, Chair. I have the same declaration to make as a member of the Liberal Democrats. I'd also like to ask, should members here present need to declare that they have actually signed the Conservative petition led by Ms Fard? Is that a requirement?
I don't know. I'll check with the monitoring officer. Sorry, do you want to speak?
Yeah. Well, that would be a non-pecuniary interest. So I would say members of this committee could declare an interest if that's relevant to them.
I'm going to start over this side because they all seem to have their hands up. I haven't forgotten you. Okay, and just for the record, I haven't signed that petition. Who's next on that side?
I'm also a member of the Liberal Democrats. I have the same interests as Councillor Lee.
And next?
I'm too echoing what Lee said.
For me, no Kang.
I declare that I have not signed the petition either.
So we've got all the Liberal Democrats on that side. Anyone over this side? Councillor Beth. So I didn't hear that because your mic was off. Sorry.
I have a yellow tie too.
Councillor Whitcroft. Do you want me to speak on your behalf? You've also got a yellow tie, is that right? Not tonight, but you...
It's come on now. Thank you to Democratic Services for that. Right, yes, I need to make that same declaration. Plus, I just want to explain to members of the public in particular why I am sitting here and not over there. I'm normally a member of the committee. Following discussions with the monitoring officer and others, it was decided it would be prudent of me to declare an interest in this matter following the executive meeting back in May, which is what I have done. Thus, I need a substitute. And helpfully the substitute has the same name as me, but that might be found a bit confusing by some people. But anyway, so I wasn't aware that I was taking an active part in this meeting this evening, but it seems I am. And since I am, as ever, well prepared, that isn't a problem. But I shall be speaking as a non-committee member, and I do represent Deep Cut and Mitchett. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. Just declaring the same declaration that Councillor Lee, the second part of Councillor Lee's declaration with the yellow tie.
Councillor Fine-Cook.
Yep, I'm also a member of the Liberal Democrats, so same declaration.
Thank you. Just to clarify, is there any Liberal Democrats in the room that haven't put their hand up saying they're part of the Liberal Democrats Party? Okay, cool. Just for clarification. Councillor Cope.
Based on what's been said, I should declare that I have signed the resident-led petition in relation to the freezing of asset sales.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, cool. Thank you. Before we, the next item is for public questions, of which there are no public questions
Chair,
tonight. Sorry.
can I seek a point of clarification? I've just looked on the website, and Councillor Sashi Malvagnam's record of member interest under point 2 says name of personal body making payments Liberal Democrats, and I'm not seeing any reference to that of a member of the Conservative Party. As all of the other Liberal Democrats have declared an interest, should Councillor Malvagnam be declaring an interest as well?
Chair, I do pay my dues to the Conservative Party. I'll unsubscribe to being a Liberal Democrat proudly. Thank you.
The record of members' interest is a matter of public record, and it clearly states Liberal Democrat.
I better declare an interest. I run the membership for the Conservatives in Surrey Heath, and I can confirm that Councillor Malvagnam does sign up to the party. His obviously register of interest needs to be changed, and obviously that can be done forthwith. Thank you. Okay, public questions.
Apologies, Chair, a point of clarification as well, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Thank you. We've received this at the meeting tonight. I haven't seen it before, and it lists the contributors. And I'm just wondering why Mr. Steve Knight is not a contributor, because the committee papers say that he was invited. Was he invited and then he refused? Because I think that'd be very if I could just finish, I think that'd be very disappointing, because he has written an open letter in which he makes party political attacks and nasty personal smears against individuals, and I think it'd be important for him to be a witness so that he can explain himself to this committee.
Well, can I make a point of clarification on that,
yes, of course.
Please? It's unlike Councillor Wilson clearly not to have read the most up-to-date version of the papers. There was an erroneous mistake.
Picked this up this evening.
Okay, well, it's clearly an error, because I requested earlier...
Apology accepted.
I don't think I apologised.
Just accused me of not reading the most up-to-date version of the papers.
Okay. I requested that reference to... I requested that reference in the papers be removed. It had never been my intention that was to be included within the papers. And I did not ever recommend that Mr. Knight be invited as a witness.
Well, as I said, I think that's really unfortunate, because he's an important part of this whole debate, because he benefits a lot from a potential change of decision. And I think it's unfortunate that the colleague and councillors didn't invite him.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a point of clarification. I don't think we have, as a committee, any right to ask any member of the public to speak or not speak, or even to be present. Obviously, if somebody has started a petition, and for that reason it's favourable if they do so, but if we could just have clarification, we don't have any right to ask for that.
Thank you, that's absolutely correct. Thank you.
And Chair, can I just
of course,
clarify? I totally accept Councillor Wheeler's point there. But we do have a right to expect councillors to attend, and was it not possible for this meeting to be scheduled on a day where Councillor Thorne could attend, because this could be one of the most significant moments of his entire time as a councillor, this call-in. And call-ins are really important, and it says in the agenda pack how important scrutiny is and how valuable it can be to get the best decisions. So I think it's just unfortunate that he's not here, and a call-in is a great responsibility, but it also goes, with that responsibility goes accountability. And if this turns out to be a party political bunfest, then the public will not welcome it. So, I mean, it's possible that the public elected Councillor Cope and Councillor Thorne in St Paul's ward, in order for them to call in the decision about selling a deep cut ward car park, but I think they need to be here. Both of them need to be here to defend it. I think it's disappointing Councillor Thorne's not here.
Okay, so the chair gets to decide on when, I'll be with you in a second, the chair gets to decide on the meeting date. We also have a full schedule, and we could have taken it to the next meeting, which is where there's already a call-in of the SIL funding and a lot of other agenda items. We decided the date because of it being available. And actually, at that time, Councillor Thorne was available. But he, like you, has a day job. And I'm sure if you suddenly had to replace someone and had to fly out somewhere, you would possibly have to do that. He has a day job, and his CEO said to him he is going with him on the 12th and whatever date here, 12th and the 13th of June to a place. Okay, so you are right. So my decision was: do I cancel it or do I leave it where it is? My decision was to leave it where it is because Councillor Cope was available. Would you like further clarification, or is that enough? Thank you. Have we got any other points of clarification before, as you quite rightly say, we want to discuss the scrutiny and eventually we might actually get there. So are we happy to... Oh, yes, Councillor, I apologise, I forgot about you.
How could you? I'm so sorry, it's just a point of clarification. Having reviewed some of the not publication information and having spotted an address which I hadn't taken notice of before, I would like everyone to be aware that I do know one of the people that have made an offer personally, but there's no pecuniary interest. And actually, up until this moment, I had no idea that they'd made an offer. So I just want to declare that, though.
Thank you for your due diligence. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Final point from me. We just heard how Councillor Whitcroft felt he was conflicted and predetermined, and that's why he withdrew from the committee. I think that's because he was photographed with supporters of the petition. And you were also photographed with supporters of the petition. And so the question, I guess, is for the monitoring officer. If, and it relates to part of the Constitution, Part 4, Section C, paragraph 17.1, which is on page 156 of the Constitution. And I'll speak slowly so that people can find it. About dealing with it if the chair has predetermined. So the question is, if this committee hypothetically was to decide to send this decision back to the executive and it was overturned and Mr Knight's offer was accepted instead, would the council potentially, if we're not following the Constitution and the chair is predetermined, would the council potentially be open to quite substantial legal challenge? Thank you.
Okay, so as the chair, which you're referring to, I did have my photograph taken outside, because as I did this evening, I went and spoke to everybody here and said hello, and I was outside when they took the photograph. I am not predetermined, because actually I will lead this in a fair, and I've been quite patient so far, a fair route, okay? I would also say that I'm not the only one that makes a decision on this. And if it comes to the decision at the end of this and it is a split vote, then we can have a discussion on whether I should be voting which way or the other. But it isn't just me that votes, it is all of you that vote. So I would suggest that I can do it impartially, and we can, if we go to vote, we can do that. And I would like to just guidance from the monitoring office on that.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the correspondence that we have had between ourselves leading up to this meeting, I'm satisfied that it's your intention and based on what you've said, to run this meeting in an impartial and balanced way, so I have no concerns about you continuing as chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, because we haven't had enough point clarifications. Go on, Mr Lee. Yes. Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. Just to clarify my position, since I've been mentioned, I don't consider that having my photograph taken with a bunch of people outside the council offices, some of whom are members of my ward, to be part of any predetermination on my part. At the executive meeting when this was discussed, I took some pains to adopt a balanced position. It was felt in the interests of fairness, if you like, and the fact that there would be members of the public here, nevertheless, I should make the decision to declare the interest I have done. But that doesn't have anything to do with taking the pictures. Thank you.
Thank you for your clarification. I'd just like to say I agree that at that meeting of the executive, which I was also at, both yourself and Councillor Betton had a very balanced view. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to turn to Ms Fard now. Just wondered if Ms Fard or any of our clients or the bidders could be in or about to be in any potential legal dispute with SHBC. I'd just like that clarified.
That's a difficult question, but I think on balance that it's at the discretion of Ms Fard if she wants to answer that question. That's separate from the business of tonight, so I'll leave that with her if she chooses to answer or not.
Are you able to say no on the council's behalf?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Are you able to say no relative to the council?
I don't understand the question. That's a legal matter, and I'd rather not comment on that publicly. Thank you.
So that's no comment as opposed to no thank you. And the follow-up, obviously, Ms Fard has multiple hats. So a Conservative campaigner as per her website and imprint, a local resident and potentially a solicitor acting for one of the bidders. It's important we understand when she speaks which hat she's wearing. Could we have clarity when she speaks as to which hat of those she's wearing, please?
Are you happy to, Ms Fard, are you happy when you're speaking to let the councillors know which hat you're apparently wearing? I couldn't see any yellow ties either, but that's fine. Okay, thank you. Before I go on to item 3, have we got any other clarification points, or can we kick on with the rest of the agenda? Brilliant. Okay, so I think I might have mentioned it, but we'll go back into it. Questions from the public, we have none, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of questions in a little while. Okay, so that brings us to item 4. We got there eventually. Consideration of call-in surplus land sales, disposal of Woodend Road car park. Before we start, I wanted to just outline the plan of attack for tonight, just so we all know that we're all singing for the same song sheet. And in conversation with the monitoring officer, we came up with this, so we were outlining the relevant parts. So I'm going to read it, because I'm bound to forget it if I didn't. I would like to clarify the parameters of this meeting. This meeting is not intended to be a rerun of the executive meeting, which considered the report to sell Woodend car park. This meeting is limited to a discussion of the call-in application by Councillor Cope and Councillor Thorne. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the reasons that were given for requesting the executive decision be called in, those being, point 1, there were 2 public questions which were unable to be answered in advance of the meeting. Therefore, the responses to these questions were not available to the executive in making this decision. Members of the public raising questions should be entitled to have questions form part of executive consideration. Point 2. There is a live...
Sorry, Chair, point of order. The reasons given for the call-in 1, 2, A, B, C and 3, that doesn't mention the public questions?
bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
Was it on the second?
Yeah.
Sorry. I apologise now, because that was the draft and we had a... So what page are we going for? That's 1.4, isn't it? Okay, I apologise now. So many papers, not enough time. Right, 1.4. So, quite right. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. In accordance with Part 4 of Section C of the Council's Constitution, following the publication of the summary of decisions at that meeting, Councillors Johnny Cope and Josh Thorne called in the executive decision at paragraph 1.2. There is a live petition which affects and was triggered by this proposal. It does not seem in line with the Council's objective of giving a voice to residents that due to Council's calendar, their petition is not heard until after the decision has been made. It is purely as a result of the Council's meetings calendar and that the decision was taken before the petition was considered. Point 2. The Council's consideration of best value for the land failed to adequately weight the community benefit of maintaining land as a car park, particularly in a view of offer which was made that would have seen the land remain in use as a car park in particular. So point A, seemingly no consideration was given to capacity of St Barbara's during school pickups and drop-offs which will be pushed out onto the main roads. Point B, little weight was given to the representations of ward councillors who all stated that car park was important to residents in Deep Cut Village and that the village would be adversely impacted by the loss of the car park. Point C, weight did appear to be given to the claim that the cross-party working group approved a decision to market the assets without objection. However, it was clear from Councillor Garrett's remarks that concerns were raised at this stage. Point 3, no adequate answer was given as to why the sale of this asset was prioritised ahead of others. The portfolio holder made reference to tranches of sale, but there is no visibility to either councillors or the wider public as to how these tranches are being determined. Any discussions, debate or questions must therefore be restricted to those reasons. This committee's role is to determine whether the reasons given for calling in the decision were warranted. We are not here to raise or debate any other points relating to either the executive meeting, car parking in general or historics. The options of the committee are set out in the call-in protocol Annex A, paragraph B of the Constitution. And there's obviously a list of them which we can obviously go through tonight. Also, I would like to say at this point, and I know that the portfolio feels this way as well, and I'm hoping that councillors agree, there are some parts of this paper that are part 2. I don't intend on going into part 2 unless there is a very, very good reason to do so, because as soon as we go into part 2, it all becomes quiet, no one sees it, public have to leave the room. Okay, so I'm hoping that you will agree with me, unless there is a very, very burning reason to go into part 2, that we stay on the agenda items, the papers as they sit with us without going into part 2. Has Councillor O'Mahony?
Can I ask for a point of clarification on what petition this actually relates to? I believe at the moment there's a Surrey Heath Conservative petition from the 20th of February. There's the Stop the Fire Sale of Lands in Surrey Heath, which is from the 9th of March. There's Stop the Fire Sale of Community Assets, which is from the 4th of May. And then there's a Wood End Car Park Survey, date to be confirmed, so recently.
Which is the particular petition that's the one that's due, I believe, reading executive minutes that came out, there mentions a petition going to the 16th of July, I believe. What petition is that specifically, do you know? And while you're checking that, thank you.
To add to that, once you've decided which of the many petitions flying around this actually relates to, could we have a copy of that petition and understand how many people have signed it and where they're from, please?
I am pretty sure that one of the witnesses will be speaking about said petition and probably will be able to give you an update on how many people of that at the time.
It would have been useful to know before the meeting which petition the call-in refers to, and particularly as chair, if you don't know, it's slightly worrying.
Of course, I understand. I apologise for not knowing everything. I apologise profusely, but we're going to just come to the bottom of that one now.
Thank you, Chair. So the Council has been or had a petition referred to it that had at the time of the referral 351 signatures on it. And the title of that petition is Stop the Fire Sale of Community Assets by Surrey Heath Borough Council.
Just to clarify, the chair was aware that there was a petition coming because he read the minutes and was in the executive, and that refers to, and the leader referred to, a petition of it coming to the next full council meeting, and the next full council meeting was the 16th July. That was the one I was aware of, but because you wanted a point of clarification, I wanted to make sure that I was on the same page.
Thank you, Chair.
Any more points of clarification, or should we kick on? Okay, cool. Right, so you've all got a list in front of you who the contributors are. It seems to be a surprise to Councillor Whitcroft that he's a contributor. I did invite you. So, you've got the running order, so I won't have to go through it. Just to clarify, though, each of the witnesses will speak for the allotted time. They don't have to speak for that amount of time, but they can't speak more than that. Then, once you've been through all the speakers, the committee members get to ask questions of those people in turn, and then the non-committee members get to speak to those people in turn. And then there is summing up, which starts with Councillor Cope and then Councillor Fine and Cook, and then we can open it up to debate. Okay, that's the plan of attack. And so, with all that in mind, I apologise for keeping you waiting, Councillor Fine and Cook, but you are up first, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit to being somewhat surprised to be sat here today, explaining and defending a decision made by the democratically elected Executive Committee. I'm surprised due to the fact that Councillor Cope, who was called in this decision, did not vote against the MTFS, which explicitly set out what this administration needs to do in order to plug the eye-watering gap in Surrey Heath's finances. However, the Liberal Democrats was elected on a manifesto which pledged transparency, and I welcome the opportunity to assist in a debate on this subject. I trust that all members of this committee are willing to listen to the reasons I'm about to set out and that they are not predetermined due to political allegiance. Surrey Heath began the marketing of Wood End Road car park in December of 2024, following a full review of council-owned assets. It must be noted by this committee that this is the product of nearly 2 years' work to get to the point of marketing sites. It most certainly was not a rushed decision, a knee-jerk reaction, and I must, for the benefit of the committee, any members of the public watching, categorically refute any claims that this is a fire sale. A fire sale is when assets are sold significantly below their market value by organisations in financial distress. Surrey Heath proposes to accept a bid on this plot, which is significantly above the Red Book valuation. I would urge caution in using politically motivated wording such as fire sale during this meeting, as it is completely misleading. Regarding the bidding process, the car park was marketed online with a specific date set for the receipt of bids. Our expert property and economic development team then collated the bids and created a RAG rating to assist the team and later the administration in selecting a preferred bidder. At this point, I'd like to assure the committee that despite protestations to the contrary from political campaigners and those with a pecuniary interest, that is a financial interest in this land, that not one single bid was received that would guarantee that this car park would remain a car park in perpetuity. Bids were assessed using multiple criteria, with the main focus being best value for residents of Surrey Heath. Whilst we obviously looked at the financial aspects of all bids received, we also had to consider whether these bids were conditional or unconditional, the required use of the land by the bidders, and whether these were likely to be approved for planning purposes. I'm minded that I'd like to keep as much of this meeting in public as possible, so I will refrain from stating financials and terms offered by the bidders, but I can tell the committee that the officer recommendation put forward and supported by myself was for the highest unconditional offer. For the benefit of anyone listening, that means we propose to approve the sale to a buyer who placed no conditions upon the transaction, meaning that a very simple and speedy contractual process is all that it would have taken to conduct before the sale was complete. There was an element of negotiation between the preferred bidder and our officers, and the advertised preference for that the car park remain as such for a period of 2 years was amended slightly to 3 months following the opening of the larger car park at St Barbara's Church. This enabled officers to negotiate a slightly higher price, providing best value for over 90,000 residents in Surrey Heath, whom we were elected to represent. I've received more than my fair share of, at times, quite frightening online abuse for stating publicly that this car park has been deemed surplus to requirements. I stand by this statement and I would like the committee to consider the following facts. Firstly, the car park is rarely at 100% occupation, and upon investigation, we have determined that many of the vehicles in the car park at any one time relate to the commercial operations of a nearby business. Residual overnight use by residents is around 20 cars on average, which can be accommodated on adjacent streets, as happens elsewhere in the borough. I also stand by the fact that the car park opening at St Barbara's will be larger, within a similar distance to the key amenities nearby, and increasing parking capacity by 25%. I'd like to draw attention to the fact that the former car park at St Barbara's was owned by the Ministry of Defence, therefore it was not a public car park, although there are some who believed it was. The new car park will be under Surrey Heath control, be free to use for residents for social and domestic use, including popping to use the popular parade businesses. I fail to see how increasing car parking, whilst generating an absolutely essential capital receipt, can be seen as anything other than best value. It would also be useful for councillors and any members of the public listening to understand that car parking is not a statutory function of the council, which means that we are not obligated to provide parking, free or otherwise, within the borough. I will address points in Councillor Cope's call-in one by one. The assertion is that the live petition is to be heard at full council after the executive decision has been made. The petition is being heard in accordance with the published council timetable. Ms Fard opened her petition as far back as February, and she could have submitted her petition prior to the date when it was actually received. While on the subject of the petition, I note that the wording requests that we refrain from selling any assets over the value of £25,000, which leads me to question why the decision to dispose of the land at London Road has not been called in. So it would be remiss of me not to query if this call-in is merely a political stunt to support the well-known political ambitions of the petitioner, considering that Councillor Cope appears on the imprint of the leaflets that Miss Fard has circulated regarding this issue and has been photographed supporting the campaign on more than one occasion, as has the chair of this committee. It would appear to me that this meeting is born from political posturing by parties who have political and maybe even financial interests in this agenda item. In terms of Councillor Cope's next reason for calling, it is my opinion, and those of the professional officers and the opinion of my executive colleagues, that best value has been achieved in the disposal of this asset. Without going so far as to push this meeting into exempt, I will once again reiterate that no bids were received which would guarantee that Wood End Road would remain as a car park in the medium to long term. I would also like to highlight that although an offer was made, which would have introduced resident and visitor parking charges at the site, common sense dictates that the residents and true users of the car park would simply have parked at St Barbara's to avoid these charges anyway. Schools, highways and indeed car parking are not functions of the Borough Council. It should be noted that our investigations have not indicated that there are any parents currently using Wood End Road car park for school drop-offs and pick-ups. It is also a fact that over time more children attending the school will come from the immediate local area and hopefully walk, scooter or cycle, as the village has been designed to accommodate safely. I'm not entirely sure why the representative of St Paul's and a political campaigner feel that they are able to speak on behalf of the school, but human behaviour dictates that parents will use their current methods of transport after Wood End Road car park is closed and adjust over time in line with Surrey County Council's school transport plans. As I believe I've covered previously, we do acknowledge that a small number of residents may have the minor inconvenience of needing to walk a few extra yards for car parking, depending on which amenities they are using. I draw your attention again to the basis of best value being in the best interests of all Surrey Heath residents, not a small handful of drivers and business owners. We do not accept that the village of Deepcut will be adversely impacted by the closure of Wood End Road car park. Weight was indeed given to the fact that this site disposal was discussed in several property and economic development working groups without disagreement. Asset disposals were discussed as a standing agenda item at the end of each meeting and no objections were raised by any member in the December, January or February working groups. I can have the minutes checked going back further if the committee wishes, but this will clearly be information that will need to be provided at a later time. In fact, asset disposals only received minor criticisms from ward members following a high-profile campaign embarked upon by Ms Fard and her Conservative colleagues. The minutes of these meetings are agreed by all members and no members have asked for amendments, meaning that they've been satisfied that the minutes are a true reflection of the discussion which has taken place. I strongly refute Councillor Garrett's assertion that he raised objections to the marketing and sale of Wood End Road car park prior to the site being marketed, and this is the exact reason why we minute the meetings. There is no particular reason that this...
Councillor Cook, that's your 8 minutes. Are you nearly close to finishing?
I've got two very short, succinct sentences.
As I know that your officer suggested to me he might not be speaking for his full allotted time, I'll let you speak a little bit longer.
There is no particular reason for this site being brought forward first. I'm sure you can imagine a lot of hard work goes into the due diligence on the site in terms of timing. Just one of the things, this one just happened to be amongst the first. There's no conspiracy, there was no plot, and there is no political agenda. This site was marketed at the same time as 2 others, so it was not prioritised as the call-in implies. There are no set tranches of assets to be marketed. There is simply work to do, and once an asset has been identified, passed through a working group, and the due diligence has been completed, following that, if the officers and myself are satisfied that the correct assets are being considered, they will be marketed. I'm sure that all members of the committee are aware that the financial strain that this council is under and your legal obligations are set and deliver a balanced budget. During our administration, we have determined that there is a significant shortfall in our funds and we must act responsibly and in the best interests of our borough and our residents to do all we can to secure the finances to protect our critical services. It was our manifesto promise and we were elected upon these promises in May 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Finan-Cook. Okay, so next up we have Mr. Breeden. No, we're going to, as I said, we're going to go through every single one of them, then we'll go back through them in order. Mr. Breeden.
By way of background, the recommendation to sell the car park that was considered on the 20th of May was produced as part of the Council's transformation programme. As set out in paragraph 4.1 of the recommendation to the Executive, the generation of capital receipts from land and property sales is a key element of the Council's medium-term financial strategy, as it will help to reduce the Council's debt interest costs. All properties are being reviewed as to whether they are producing a strong contribution to the Council's finances or causing an unnecessary financial impact. Deep car park generates no income to the Council, and accordingly was identified as an opportunity to generate a capital receipt. Assets of significantly higher value than Deep Cut Car Park either tend to be properties let to commercial occupiers, such as the Square Shopping Centre or the office and industrial portfolio, and in these instances, the interest saving from using capital receipts to pay down debt is unlikely to exceed the rental income that the Council receives in the short term. Alternatively, higher value assets may consist of the Camberley Town Centre regeneration sites, where capital receipts will take some time to be received, and where guidance on strategy is taken regularly from the Property and Economic Working Group. Or lastly, they tend to be significant areas of woodland or open space or parkland, which the Property and Economic Development Working Group and portfolio holder have indicated no inclination to sell. Councillor Finan-Cook has explained the process by which members were consulted prior to the marketing of the site, and the Executive report sets out the process of marketing, and in the appendix, the competitive bids that were received on the back of that marketing process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a little bit disappointed with the tone of the start of this meeting. I really don't think tonight should be seen as an inconvenience by the Council's leadership. This is an important part of democratic oversight, and I really want to have a constructive approach here. I want to leave politics at the door. This is not a Conservative Liberal Democrat thing. This is a scrutiny of a decision taken by the Executive, and it is for this committee to determine whether the process followed by the Executive was satisfactory. The focus should be on how the decision to sell Deep Cut Car Park was arrived at. I make no bones, I think it was the wrong decision, but the concern here is process. Did the Executive properly consider all aspects when making its decision in a fair way to Surrey Heath residents, and in particular Deep Cut residents? And so to help me in my mind, I sort of broke the decision down into 3 sections, which I'm going to go through. The first is, why would we sell any asset? The second is, why was Deep Cut Car Park chosen to be sold? And the third point, which I know I need to be careful about, is why the offer that was accepted was chosen. So point number 1 is why the asset was marketed. And I think this is where the Executive, to be fair, did give a reason. And it was to generate capital receipts, as we've heard. Now, is that a good reason? Is it good for a council that's going to not be here in 2 years to be marketing assets? I don't know. but over 800 Surrey Heath residents have signed a petition saying that they don't think it's a good idea. And I think there's a real question as to whether their voice is really being heard. We all want to see an accountable council. That's why we're here tonight. And we all say we want to involve residents in decision-making process. So I would ask members of the committee, is it a satisfactory position that full council will only consider a petition which was triggered by this very issue after the decision on the issue has already been made? Voices are being cut out due to a quirk of the council's calendar. Now, it feels to me a little bit like we're saying, well, you can have your say, but only if it fits our timetable. If I'm busy on Saturday, I'm not going to listen. That perception is really damaging. And the executive did not have the benefit of the discussion of the petition when they were making their decision. That, again, seems to me a deep flaw. It seems to me that the cart has gone before the horse. Now, I want to move on to the second question, which is why this particular asset was chosen for salt. And here, I do think there are murkier waters. I genuinely don't know the answer. I can't tell you why the executive feels that this asset should be marketed. And if I don't know, then how do members of the public have any chance of knowing? But what I do know is that deep cut residents feel in some ways targeted. They've taken more than their fair share of Surrey Heath housing over the past 10 years. Their infrastructure has been stretched, and now their own council is taking away a vital piece of infrastructure. And the justification, well, I'll leave it up to you to see whether you think that's been made by the comments so far. I still don't understand why deep cut car park was chosen. At the executive meeting, the portfolio holder spoke of tranches of sales, but there's no transparency to wider councillors. It may be discussed at these property working groups, but we're not all attending those, and residents certainly don't have sight of those. So we need to understand how sites are being identified and what criteria is being used. None of this appeared to be discussed at the Executive Council. Surrey Heath, as has been touched upon, has many higher value assets. So if the justification is about generating capital receipts, surely logic dictates that you would sell a higher value asset. I don't think it should be lost on the committee that the value of deep cut car park, without getting into the numbers, is a drop in the ocean when it comes to the council finances. It is neither here nor there. The only argument when I rewatched the executive the other day that I could see that was preferred for this site is the idea that the car park is underused. And that just doesn't reflect the reality whenever I visited it and when I've discussed this issue with residents in Deep Cut. Any concerns on this justification seem to be ignored at the executive meeting. There was this idea that St Barbara's Church will pick up the parking capacity. But when I raised how that would happen, given that it was intended to be used for school pickups and drop-offs, that was not engaged with at all in the executive meeting. I appreciate the portfolio holders just engaged with it now, but the executive didn't have the benefit of that answer when they made their decision. I don't see how this car park can both pick up capacity for Deep Cut Town Centre and also be used for pickups and drop-offs. It's going to be unavailable for large parts of the day. The executive, in my view, therefore made a decision based on a false premise that the capacity would be picked up at St Barbara's when the evidence to me suggests that it's not. Therefore, the only vague justification for the selection of this site does not stand up to scrutiny. Why not a more valuable site was sold? We've heard from Martin some explanation of that. Again, that wasn't touched on at the executive. This information was not available when they made this decision. Why were the capacity issues not properly engaged with? So finally, it's why this offer. And I know I need to be very careful what I say, but I think based on what the portfolio holders said, I can probably say what I'm going to say. It is clear that the highest monetary value that could be generated was not accepted. It is also clear that the offer on the table, which was most likely to see the car park preserved as a car park for public use, was not accepted. As was touched upon, the council's obligation is to obtain best value. But at no point did the executive really clarify what criteria they were using to determine best value. If it's capital receipts, then surely you would go for the highest offer, whether it's conditional or not. If it's amenity to Deep Cut Village, then maintaining the site as a car park is clearly a fundamental justification for which offer you would select. But this wasn't quantified at the meeting. No consideration was given to how you would quantify the amenity for Deep Cut residents vis-a-vis monetary value. I think that issue was not dug into enough at this meeting. And again, this leads to a feeling that residents are being cut out of the process. So why did they select this offer? I honestly don't know. I'm sure it was done in good faith, but I don't know the reason. And I don't think Deep Cut residents know the reason. And we owe it to our residents to explain the decisions taken by this council. So let's go back to those three questions. Why are we selling assets? Why was Deep Cut car park chosen to sell? And why was this particular offer accepted? I think the test should be, are we comfortable answering those questions fully to the residents who are sitting behind me tonight? Can we explain and justify that decision based on what was discussed at the executive meeting last month? I don't think we can, and I hope that the committee will agree with me. Residents are feeling cut out, and the fact that we have a petition sitting on this issue, waiting to be heard at a moment that is convenient to us as councillors, is simply unacceptable. I hope that the committee will agree with me and ask the executive to look again at this, perhaps based on some of the information that we've heard tonight, which I don't believe was discussed at the executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. So, Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with Councillor Cope's comments about this shouldn't be a political decision. But the tone of misinformation and online abuse has meant that that's a lovely but completely disingenuous statement. The council finances are one of the areas of discussion and debate within the potential sale of non-working assets. And so I wanted to ensure that we will have the same facts and the same information. Clearly, I'm unable to give any information relating to the bids themselves, and members of the committee will see that in the exempt papers. So if you want to talk about that, we will have to go into exempt, as Councillor Finan-Cook said earlier. Surrey Heath Borough Council, and therefore its residents, all 90,000 of them, have a budget gap of 8.1 million between income and expenditure for this financial year. This gap is filled to allow us to set a balanced budget by transferring our reserves from the balance sheet. Therefore, this year, the reserves transfer is budgeted at 8.1 million, and next year, 5.8 million, during which we then run out of earmarked reserves. In addition, our liquid assets, e.g. our cash, as per the draft financial statements, is sitting at 6.9 million. Contrary to what some of our Tory councillors are saying on Facebook, reserves are debt. It doesn't take a genius to see that we have more reserves on the balance sheet than cash. This means that using the reserves, which can only be used once, requires us to take out more borrowing, more debt. So each pound that comes out of our reserves costs us an additional 5% per annum. The more interest we have to pay, the quicker our cash goes down. The quicker we pull on reserves, the more we have to borrow. It's a cycle which only finishes with bankruptcy, and therefore it's unsustainable. And for additional clarity, the income we receive is of council tax of £10.4 million. We retain only 2.5% of our business rates, totalling under £1 million a year, and grants and other limited funding of 1.8 million. This is totalling approximately £13 million per annum. Our direct cost of services is 14 million. Our interest repayments are 7 million. We have nearly £3 million for MRP. That number is criminal for the size of borough we are. Costs are nearly double that of our funding. Our debt is 10 times our annual revenue budget. Our grandchildren will still be funding today's debt. Grant Thornton, in their January 2025 paper, cited the purchase of the Square and the former House of Fraser building, both purchased in secrecy or under emergency powers by the previous administration, and with no transparency that is being called on today by the same people. That is the reason that our debt level is at this crippling level. As everyone in this chamber has heard time and time again, without taking fundamental action through the transformation programme and service delivery review, this council will have the administrators in place and they will leave no stone unturned. They will leave no piece of land to sit untouched. They will not be accepting of any discretionary service. Their role is to ensure that statutory services are provided only, and to fund this and claw back debt, they will increase council tax way over our legal threshold. Woking residents have had theirs increased by 10% for the past 2 years. Our 90,000 residents do not deserve having to fund the historic negligence, as well as having the increased landing on their doorsteps with substantially fewer services, simply because the decisions that could have saved us were considered a little too tough. Or even worse, that sensible decisions were delayed to suit a political narrative at the expense of our residents' future. To be clear, statutory services include functions such as roadside bin collection. That actual requirement does not stipulate the frequency of roadside bin collection. Our view of what is a statutory versus a discretionary service is not black or white or clearly linear. It will hit far harder and far further than most of us think. So we sell these underperforming assets in the council's portfolio. What are our options? Well, we can repay the capital and therefore reduce our interest payments. And at an average rate of short-term loans at just over 5%, for every 1 million of asset sales, this would be just over £50,000 saving on interest repayments for a full year. Or 3,500 meals to be provided at home to our most vulnerable residents.
Councillor McIntyre, have you nearly...
Very close, Chair. I'm using pauses.
Don't use so many pauses.
We could utilise the capital receipts to fund other capital projects which are required and thus not have to incur further interest costs. Finally, we can use the receipts to fund our transformation programme, which is not an option not to do. So how does this one asset we appear to have a whole meeting scheduled to discuss contribute? We have, within the transformation programme, allocated £10 million to be achieved in total, which you'll be aware of, Chair. That has been estimated by looking at the council portfolio, the performance of each site and the book values. And yes, Councillor Cope, whilst this site is just one, it is a significant proportion of that saving. If we looked at each one in isolation and simply said, oh, sorry, that won't fix the problem, then we just won't sell anything. We have all heard the phrase, take care of the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. Well, here, we're needing to take care of the pennies to make sure that the millions of pounds we somehow need to replenish are. And timing is also of the essence. We run out of general reserves next year. A conditional offer, an offer with an overage clause, an offer with a long completion date are just simply too late. Best value for our 90,000 residents is not the promise of money in the future, it's the sensible management of our finances and making council assets work now.
Oh, you were just about to be shut. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. Ms Fard.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you for this opportunity. And I'm here today on behalf of Deepcut residents and residents of the nearby villages to raise our concerns about the Executive's decision to sell Wooden Road car park, an essential piece of infrastructure for Deepcut and its surrounding villages. This car park is vital to local residents, businesses, visitors, vulnerable groups and communities, and has been used by the public for years in addition to St Barbara's Church car park. The decision to sell this vital piece of infrastructure was flawed. First, the process was fundamentally flawed. I launched a petition, signed by over 800 local residents at present, asking the council not to proceed with the sale. I was informed by Democratic Services that the Executive should have considered whether to defer the decision-making until full council debated the petition. This did not happen. The item was not on the agenda, and the Executive was simply told the petition would be considered later after the decision. This undermines public trust and the democratic value of petitions. Second, the report which was relied upon to justify the sale was flawed. It referred to St Barbara's Church car park as new. This is incorrect. Residents have provided overwhelming evidence, including photos, social media posts, personal testimonies, that St Barbara's car park has long been used by the public. It is not new. Its current closure is temporary due to redevelopment. I have provided you with all the evidence that proves the same. The report also failed to adequately deal with the protected characteristics of worshippers, pregnant women, the elderly, people with medical conditions, and the disabled once Wooden Road car park closes. Third, the claim that Wooden Road car park is underused is false. a member of the executive who made a decision to sell the car park, had earlier claimed it was underused. I mean, we heard that today. But the council's own car parking strategy, which I have provided to you, it shows it consistently operates at or near full capacity, around 40 cars. Also have provided photographic and resident evidence to support this. Selling the car park to a buyer who does not intend to retain it for parking means that up to 40 cars will be displaced and possibly more demands for parking spaces created. The only other car park, St Barbara's, will soon be in heavy use again. Under a Section 106 agreement, church services and community events will soon take place at St Barbara's church building, requiring as many as 50 spaces during peak times. Under a separate agreement, St Barbara's will also serve as a drop-off point for the school, up to 100 cars probably daily. It cannot support church use, school drop-offs, local businesses, and displaced cars from Woodend Road. In addition, Deep Cut is growing. The same Section 106 agreement outlines over 1,000 new homes. This development increases, not decreases, the need for parking. Let me be clear, Deep Cut needs infrastructure, not the loss of it. If the council was in such desperate and urgent need to liquidate assets, the council had options. It could have sold another asset, as we heard today, and even if it had to sell this one, it did receive an offer from a local business that would have kept the car park open to the public. That offer was rejected. And one wonders if the difference between the two offers would have made much of a difference to the council's overall financial position. Fifth, there was also confusion about conditions of sale. Investors were originally told the car park must stay open for 2 years, but this requirement was later removed. It appears, and we heard today, that negotiations were underway before the executive formally approved the sale, raising concerns about transparency. The council's report failed to account for actual usage data, community growth, disability, access needs, and conflict in timelines. The minutes of the executive state that Woodend Road car park will be open until St Barbara's Church car park can be used. But paragraph 1.2 of the report submitted to the executive said that the car park must stay open until December 2026 or until St Barbara's reopens, whichever comes first. So what if St Barbara's car park is not ready by December 26? The community risks having no parking at all. So this decision can also result in the decline in business footfall due to the location of St Barbara's car park down the hill
Miss
and the other
Fard,
side of the road.
Have you got much to go?
Only 5 sentences.
Well, I'll give you,
4
as
lines.
I've been fair with everybody else, I'll give you a minute.
Thank you. So Surrey Heath is struggling with such decline elsewhere, and deep cut businesses should be protected against such eventuality, not thrown into it. So I urge this council to reconsider the sale, or at the very least ensure any future use preserves public access to this essential infrastructure as a car park. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Betton.
Thank you. I'm not going to say anything new. You've heard it before. I said it at the executive. And I've got, it's the same printed piece of paper. I must make it clear that I fully understand the need for the council to raise funds from the sale of assets that are surplus to requirements. I will throw in a remark to Councillor Cope here, and I suggest that Woodend Road might have been top of the list because St Barbara's car park is coming soon. If you look at the gate, it says closed until September 2025. Even allowing for builders, I don't think December 26 is likely to be the key date. We have to have a balanced budget, otherwise we will be bust. People will come in, but then in 2 years' time, we're going to unitary authority, but we don't know what that configuration is going to be. We will go bust before that. I won't be one of the people making those decisions. So I have no axe to grind. I have no favour to curry in this matter at all. What I'm concerned about is what's the right for the people who elected me and for whom I still represent. The acceptance of all the bids, there were 10. This is not going into section 2. Trust me on this. There were 10 bids. 8 of them had conditions. 2 of them were deemed not to have conditions. One of those has had conditions. The bid from Mr. Knight, who is here, and who I mentioned in the executive meeting, was not conditional. Moving to the effect of Deep Cut itself, 1,200 homes are being built on the Deep Cut Barracks, Mindenhurst site. 800 are still to come. The difference in the distance from the Wood End Road car park to the shops, and we'll take Deep Cut Cafe as the median point, it's 15 yards further from St Barbara's car park. That, I do not think, is a significant difference. There are currently 91 spaces in St Barbara's Church. Under the Section 106 agreement, that number is going down to 61 for environmental, make it look pretty and all lovely. That decision was taken over 10 years ago. If and when the car park comes to the council, whichever council that is, what we call it at the time, those numbers can be changed. 48 spaces lost from Wood End Road, potentially 91 gained. I don't think that that is significant in terms of loss of amenity. But we have a bid, we have a process, and the process was not as it was set out to be. Mr. Knight made a bid. He has upped his bid. Why don't we have an auction? Get as much money as possible. Let's have a level playing field. My beef with the process was that the playing field changed during the process. If Mr. Knight's bid had been successful, we would not, I suggest, be talking now. If we want to build a better future for Deep Cut, and Mindenhurst is part of that, we cannot build in parking blight from the outset. I would suggest Wood End Road needs to stay as a car park, and there is one bid that will achieve that and generate funds, and we can walk away with cash to get rid of the capital. Now, we can do it now. It's the only bid that met the council's own conditions of a 2-year period of maintaining the car park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Besson. And finally, Councillor Whitcroft. Sorry, Councillor David Whitcroft.
Thank you. Let me apologise to you, Chair, about my confusion over whether or not I was supposed to contribute tonight. I misunderstood your invitation, because at that time I was still a member of the committee. Now I'm not. Anyway, but you'll understand, I'm sure. You'll also be surprised as well, because I'm actually going to stick to the guidance that you indicated right at the outset of this. I'm just going to talk about some facts of the call-in as detailed on paragraphs 1 to 4 or 5 of the agenda item. And if I don't, then please shout. The call-in has been made by 2 Conservative councillors who both represent St Paul's. I hear Councillor Cope say that this is a non-political matter. If it's non-political, why didn't he ask me or my colleagues? I understand why he didn't ask Councillor Morgan Rise, perhaps because he's a member of the executive, but Councillor Betton and myself don't have those disadvantages, if I can put it in that way. I'm not sure that's quite right. But anyway, neither of the callers in consulted me as councillor for Mitchett and Deepcut about this call-in, which, frankly, I think is a little discourteous. But more importantly, they could have got some useful background information on the matter had they taken the trouble to do that. Incidentally, I'm quite happy, Councillor Cope, to explain the reasons for the selection of the Wood End car park, but I'm not going to do it now. But by all means, give me a call or whatever. I was surprised at the discourtesy which I've just mentioned, because the two members concerned are ones that I have a considerable personal regard for. I underline personal. And I suppose that discourtesy is explained, especially if we consider the petition mentioned in 141 of the call-in. It's organised by someone who's attempted to get elected as a Conservative councillor on more than one occasion. One of her key supporters is a Conservative county councillor. And quite a few of the people supporting her activities have connections to the Conservative Party. Now, with the best will in the world, open-minded people will see the obvious connection here. Conservative call-in, Conservative petition organiser, Conservative key supporters. Those same open-minded people, I would suggest, will draw their own conclusions from that. Notwithstanding Councillor Cope's claims to be acting in a non-political way. Moving on to fact 3, on the subject of school pickups mentioned at 2A of the call-in rationale, clearly the call-in councillors have no awareness of the cooperation between all parties concerned, and in that I include the local county council who played an important role in the many meetings which took place over many months in respect of the traffic and parking issues associated with the school in Mindenhurst Road. Had the callers in asked, they could have been given some understanding of the complexities of the issue, which are huge and which still need to be discussed in further detail with Surrey County Council and other impacted parties. So again, that's a matter for concern that no local members were consulted on the matter. And on that subject, 2B of the call-in claims that little weight was given to the representations of ward councillors by the executive in reaching their decision about the car park. As one of those councillors, and I have to say again that to refer to myself and my colleagues without actually having asked us about that issue was somewhat disrespectful and ill-mannered, in my view.
Councillor Whitcroft, I know you hadn't written anything down because you weren't expecting to be speaking.
No, that's
You've reached
right.
your 5 minutes. I'm happy to give you a little bit more.
Right. That's very kind of you. I also object to the selective comments in 2B, which just refer to the remarks I made about the impact on Deep Cut. I did, in fact, go to some lengths to discuss the financial position, which has been described so well this evening by Councillor McIntyre. I'm not going to try your patience further, Chair. My final point is that only once the St Barbara's car park is passed to the council will the particular future parking needs for Deep Cut and its residents become known. And only then, too, one suspects, will the political scaremongering on this issue, which has been unhelpfully, in my opinion, promoted by this call-in this evening, come to an end. Thank you.
That's lucky, because if I'd shut you down now, that would have seemed like I was being political, wouldn't it? You just hit your minute. You just hit your minutes. That's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's timings. It's a little bit. Stop that. It seems like we got through that with little or no issues. Right. So what that means is we find ourselves going back through the list with questions from the committee first. And then from the non-committee. I believe there's only one councillor online. Okay, cool. Right, so with that in mind, we're going to go back to Councillor Finan-Cook. Just for the record, obviously I want to try and give everybody a talking, but I obviously at the same time don't want to go around in circles and go over stuff again. With that in mind, at the very beginning, we did say that we wanted to keep it to the call-in. I think Councillor McIntyre eloquently explained the financial situation that we find ourselves in and why the decision has been made. I don't think we need to, in this chamber, again, go through all of that. And I know I'll be accused of not being scrutinising things, but I think it's pretty fair to say we have scrutinised that in this chamber on a number of times, and anybody who wants to watch it can prick any council meeting in the last 3 or 4 years, and they'll probably hear the same thing, okay? That's not me being political, that's the truth, okay? So I think it's fair to say that you've covered it, okay? I do not really want to go back down that route unless there's a really good reason to do that, okay? That being said, over to Councillor Finan-Cook. Who's first for the questions? I've got Councillor, are you writing these down because I'm not getting quick enough? Councillor Wheeler, Councillor O'Mahony. Councillor Wheeler first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Finan-Cook. I'd just like to ask a couple of clarification points, and just want to check there's nothing wrong with my hearing. Was I correct in hearing you say that the church car park will be completely free for residents to park in? And on that basis, I wonder what it is about Deep Cut whereby they deserve a free car park, which will have considerable running costs. And I just wondered what guarantees we were in a position to given that we all know that Borough Council is not going to exist for much longer, that car park will remain free in perpetuity. But also, I'd be grateful if you could give some justification to me for my residents as to why we have to subsidise Deep Cut residents for free parking. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's an excellent question, Councillor Wheeler. Before my time during negotiations, that was stipulated that car park must be a free car park in perpetuity for residents and visitors to Deep Cut. I do completely believe you, agree with you that the council taxpayer in Surrey Heath is subsidising parking currently in Deep Cut and will be subsidising parking in Deep Cut for many years to come. I don't know if Mr Breen wanted to add anything with regards to the contracts on that car park.
Yeah, I believe it's pursuant to a Section 106 agreement, but I'd have to go back and check my facts, but I think that's the origin of it. It's an obligation.
Thank you. Sorry, press the button. Councillor O'Mahony.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Finan-Cook. Going back to the car park, is it fair to say on balance, and perhaps as evidence in the council records, that the customers and the operational businesses activities of Deep Cut Garage mean they're the prime user of Wood End Road car park?
Thanks for the question, Councillor O'Mahony. Anecdotal evidence certainly suggests that Deep Cut Garage is a very heavy user of that garage, both now and historically.
Second part. So a continuation of subsidising parking. Does that mean that councils and residents are effectively subsidising Deep Cut Garage at the value of the subsidies, free use of an asset worth the value of the highest bid received? So they're getting a benefit of several £100,000.
It's entirely accurate and fair to say that council taxpayers are funding free car parking for a commercial enterprise in Deep Cut, yes.
Thank you, Liz.
Can I just ask a question off the back of that? So do we know for a fact that only people that are going to Deep Cut Garage are using that car park?
I don't believe I said that, Councillor Garrett. I said people are using that car park free of charge when using Deep Cut Garage.
Point of order, Chair. That does seem like your judgment's slightly clouded there with the way you asked the exec member that question.
No, I was just asking the question based on the question that had been asked, because I misinterpreted the question, because I thought you said that the way it went was that mainly Deep Cut Garage customers use that car park, so in which case I apologise, that's what it sounded like, but you have clarified it, so thank you for that. Sorry, Councillor Wilson, sorry, your button was on first.
Thank you. No, it's just to expand on that. I think what Councillor Finan Cook was saying, correct me if I was wrong there, it's not just people parking there to then go to the garage or somewhere else. It's the garage actually storing vehicles there that customers have taking their vehicles to the garage to be repaired. And then the garage is storing them there, maybe before and after the repair. And that is the main use of the Wood End Road car park. Is that correct?
My understanding, it's a lot of the staff of the garage use it, and I think Mr. Knight has said that himself, but he doesn't tend to use it for vehicle parking that's once they've been serviced. That's what Mr. Knight's told me, and I've got no reason to disbelieve that.
And Mr. Knight has made a substantial bid for this car park, so it's obviously a valuable asset to him and his business.
I guess I don't know whether that's my place to answer that. He's obviously made his bid, and I've just commented on what he's told me about the current use of the car park, and I think I've relayed that accurately. And as I say, that I don't think I've heard any anecdotes that suggest otherwise on that use of the car park.
Just to clarify, because I just wanted to speak to the monitoring officer, just to clarify, obviously you've had a conversation with Mr. Knight and he mentioned to you at that point that his staff might use that car park, but what you're also saying is you can't agree or disagree with the comment that people that are using it that aren't employees might be using the car park as well. That's basically what you're saying, yeah?
That's correct. To be completely clear, what Mr. Knight told me, and I'm sure, which is that his staff tend to park there. His customers tend to sometimes pop in and then go in and say, my car's over here, can you deal with it? Once he's worked on their car, he stores it on his own site. So he doesn't leave vehicles that he's serviced in the car park, but his staff do use it. That is what he's told me. I haven't heard any anecdotes to suggest.
Thank you for the clarification. Councillor Lee, did you have your hand up? I saw your hand go up a minute ago, so was it yourself? Because I saw that go. Okay, it was the other hand, but that's fine. Okay, I've got no one else at their hand up. Is anyone? Councillor Malvaganam.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a couple of points because, as I already declared, I've not signed the petition. In fact, I've not even seen it. So I'm trying to be as unbiased, but try and get a perspective for the council. We spoke about, Councillor McIntyre didn't mention MTFS, so let me also quietly mention that as well. MTFS, the amount of money we are going to get without putting a value to it, that is reasonably insignificant when it comes to the interest payments. I would actually be careful in using the MTFS.
Sorry, keep pressing the wrong button. Councillor Malvaganam, can I ask you to ask a question?
Yes, I'm going to. Yeah. So what I'm actually going to ask is, because based on that and based on further calculations in part one of the thing, why can't we use the car park as a paid car park? I know Section 106 is there. Maybe we can do something about it. Council could work through that. That way we get a consistent income coming to the council rather than a one-off payment to the council. That makes more sense to me. And also, finally, I want to ask, are we doing the right thing by the residents? Because the petition here was about 800, I've been told, for the petition, which like I said, I've never seen it. This is the first time I've even heard the figure. That is far bigger than I believe, the county's petition on the unitary. So it's a smaller population with a larger percentage now saying we don't want the car park. So do we think we need to send this back to the exec now?
Thank you. Councillor Fine-Cook.
Thank you, Councillor Malvagadam. I think your question there was, why do we not just begin charging at Wood End as opposed to selling the site? Am I right in reading that? It would take us an awful lot of time to make that money back in terms of charging per car per hour when we could achieve a capital receipt fairly quickly by allowing this sale to go through. And we need money now, Councillor Malvagadam. We don't need to look at it as an operating profit over the next 20 years. We need to try and plug the black hole right now to see us through to the end of our administration.
Thank you. This isn't the debate right now. We're just asking questions. So if we just ask questions, that would be marvellous. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Oh, and is it Councillor? Sorry, I can't see you because Councillor Hoff's head is. So, Councillor O'Mahony. Put your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I just want a bit of clarification on that main user point. I'm led to believe that the agent's letter says that Deep Cut Garage are the prime user of the site. Did I misread that or misunderstand that?
I don't know which document you're referring to, Councillor Omani. As I said, anecdotal evidence suggests that they are a high volume user of the site. I don't know which document. Councillor Omani, we are dangerously close to needing to go in part 2 if we follow through with your question there, I think.
Yes, and I don't think any of us want to go down that route. No, okay, fair enough. The Chief Exec would just like to come in with something.
Thank you, Chair. It's pertinent to the conversation we're having around the use of the car park, and I think during Ms Fard's opportunity to speak her 5 minutes, there was reference to the parking strategy, and clearly you'll understand from an officer perspective, this was something that was drafted by officers and our parking manager and went through a great deal of scrutiny. It's important to note that the next sentence is relevant to the consideration for this calling. So as Ms Fard said, the facility consistently appears to be an operating facility with very few vacant spaces available during each visit. The next sentence goes on to say it's been suggested that the primary user of this car park is an adjacent business. I think it's relevant that we have all of that commentary as opposed to one element. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Following Councillor Mann-Wagenham's suggestion of making it a paid car park, hello, waving back, a paid car park, I want to just explore with Councillor Feenan-Cook. It's a very unusual car park in terms of the fact that it has a very long maximum stay time in it compared to other car parks. And having visited there myself, I have seen staff from Deep Cut Garage parking there. I've seen customers parking there. And I've also seen some cars parked there for a very long time. Does the councillor feel that if we were to introduce charging, those vehicles that stay there for a long time would continue to stay there for a long time and pay us lots of money?
Anything I say to this one, Councillor Lee, would be, pure guesswork. I would assume that cars wouldn't stay there for 18 hours if we were charging what we are charging the majority of our car parks. It is an unusually long stay period maximum, I agree. Was not this administration's doing. That's been in place for quite a long time, and it'd be interesting to know how that came about for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I do want to get to the debate, and I know no one else had their hand up, so unless someone specifically wants to, we've done this for 11 minutes, I want to try and spread it out, so unless anyone's got a real burning question for Councillor Fine-Cook, we can move it on, but if someone else wants to ask a question, I'm not going to stop you, no one else had their hands up.
Just to clarify, we've done our questions for Councillor Fine-Cook, we're going to move on to Mr Breeden next.
Exactly that. But I just want to make it clear, I'm not moving you on because I want to stop you. I just want to move it on because I want to try and keep the time going, okay? So has no one else got their hand up? Okay, cool. So if that's the case, thank you, Councillor Fine-Cook. Next questions are for Mr Breeden, and the first one up was Councillor Wheeler, and then
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Could you clarify, please, whether a full analysis of the usage of the area has been undertaken? how it was undertaken and over what period of time. There's obviously been a lot of speculation this evening and in other meetings about the usage of the car park. I have to say I'm not comfortable with speculation. I would much rather have detailed facts and figures, and I wonder if we could have some clarity on that, please.
Really sorry, Councillor, I didn't hear the key word in your question. Was some analysis of what done?
Has a full analysis of the usage of the area of the car park been undertaken? And if so, how was it undertaken and over what period of time?
Yeah, there's no formal counting equipment in that car park. So there hasn't been, if you like, a quantitative analysis, formal analysis or car parking survey done.
So to be clear then, when the executive made the decision, they made the decision based on suggestive information rather than detailed information. And presumably we didn't take into impact the residents that are clear by and also a little court afterwards. I am in the process of looking for the planning application for that court to see if it makes reference to a nearby adjacent free car park. I don't remember. It may well have been before my time, but I'm trying to find it. Thank you.
There's lots of, if you like, qualitative information from our car parking team, who obviously regularly visit and inspect the car park. There's lots of information from ward councillors on usage, and also obviously taken into account was the fact that there's going to be another free car park at St Barbara's, which will be 25% larger. So those were the key points of consideration in terms of capacity.
Thanks. If I can just come back on that. Sorry, you've said that the church car park is going to be 25% larger. It's just that somebody said earlier it was actually going to be smaller than the current capacity. Can I have clarification on that? I thought somebody said that 31 spaces have been removed to make it look pretty, and don't get me wrong, you know how I love a bit of greenery. But I thought that had been said, but I may just have misheard.
It's 25% larger than Wood End Road car park.
But it's not. It's a smaller car park than the car park that was always there. Yes. Okay.
That's
thank
correct.
You.
Yeah.
Can I just, I've seen your hand. The Chief Exec just wants to come in on the parking point as well.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. As I understand it, St Barbara's, the forecourt there was also part of a parade ground and other elements as well. So whilst there was larger parking capacity there than is currently proposed under the planning application, I'm not sure it's entirely relevant for this part of the debate. The other point to make, you raised the question about analysis of the car parking usage. The points that I would refer to again would be the parking strategy, where the parking manager and his team routinely visit car parks on the basis of health and safety to make sure that they are fit for purpose and safe, and that includes our non-chargeable car parks as well, like this. The analysis that was conducted at the time of the formation of the parking strategy was on the basis of a number of visits undertaken by the parking manager and his team. So I can say with reasonable confidence that his commentary within that parking strategy were accurate at that point in time.
I think Councillor Hough was first and then Councillor O'Mahony.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering whether you may be able to confirm whether the Council, under previous administrations, had ever engaged in discussions about the sale of any car parks or underutilised car parks within the borough.
Well, I was only here for a relatively short period under the previous council, so no, I wasn't aware during that time. So, no.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Mahony.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Breeden, can you just advise if Deep Cut Garage or its agents have historically ever approached the council to purchase the car park for its sole use?
I'm going to shut that down because I've just been told by both people either side of me it's not relevant.
I can't hear you say.
It's not relevant.
You don't think it's relevant?
I wasn't my decision because I'm being really clear that I'm not doing that. I've just been advised by officers both sides of me that they both said to me it's not relevant.
In historical context, we've been asked to give an organisation a big discount. If there's a history of them previously asking for the same, should that not be relevant?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor O'Mahony. I think it comes back to the opening commentary from the Chair around the breadth of the debate. And one of the key points was we're not here to raise or debate any other points relating to either the executive meeting, car parking in general, or historics. Effectively, what you're asking is a historic matter, and therefore I would say that doesn't come in with the terms of the call-in.
Yeah, Councillor Lee.
Point of order. It's been raised about utilisation previously of St Barbara's car park, which is historical information. So presumably that also needs to be discarded as well as historical information about a utilisation of a car park. We need to be clear we're playing with a straight bat, and I'm slightly concerned that the chair's conflicted.
Okay, just for the record, and I will make it blatantly clear, okay, I made it clear that both officers, either side of me, told me that that wasn't relevant. I didn't do anything until they did, okay? I am, because of exactly what was said at the beginning of this meeting, I am letting the officers lead me, okay? But this officer on this side of me, the Chief Exec, has just said that's a relevant point. And because he said that, we will take that question. I don't know if we're going to get an answer for it, because I don't know if anyone knows the answer, but we will take that question and see if we can give you an answer for it, David, Councillor Mahoney. But I don't know who's going to be able to answer that, because Mr Breeden wasn't here. So I don't know if we're going to be able to answer that question now. Okay. Even if he has, and I don't believe he has, but even if he has, we can't disclose it. For the exactly same reasons we can't disclose what's in these Part 2 papers. And again, that wasn't my decision, that's what the officers on either side of me have said.
Just for the minutes, that I think that's it's slightly unfair, because if one party is using historical evidence and we can't use historical evidence on the other side of the argument, that doesn't seem appropriate or fair.
I believe what we're talking about is historical business arrangements, and as I say, I think the problem we've got is, in fairness, no one in this room here, I'm pretty fair to say, including me, was around when that decision was made. So, not that this is going to help the debate. We could certainly go away and investigate that. But we cannot give you an answer on that.
As a point of order, St Barbara's is mentioned in the petition, and that decision was made prior to the people here being around. So we seem to be tying ourselves up in knots here.
Right, I'm being told that I have been fair and I need to move on. I know that you're not happy with that, Councillor Lee, but I don't know what else at this point I'm actually in a position to do, unless what are you asking us to do?
I think we need to understand what the parameters of the call-in are and which pieces of information are actually admissible, because we've had one piece of historical information that isn't, we've got another piece of historical information that is. I'm confused. I don't understand, Chair.
But it's also fair to say that the executive brought the discussion about the St Barbara's into the discussion, did they not, as part of their paper? So they brought that into the paper, so that's why the St Barbara's is being discussed, yes. The discussion about what previously happened with that car park was, I don't think, was a key point within the executive paper. Is that fair?
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, cool. So on advice, the call-in does specifically mention the current position for St Barbara's, but it doesn't specifically mention the historical. That's what basically we're saying, yes? Yeah. And because of that, that's why we're ruling that we can't discuss the previous discussions about the deep cut, it's the wood end car park. Sorry, I did see you, Councillor Wilson. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
It's fine. Just perhaps officer advice and Chair's opinion on this. Looking at the call-in, it says outcome sought 1, reconsideration of the best value judgment used to justify the sale, in particular with reference to the offer made by a buyer to maintain the car park. Now, that is a reference to Mr Knight's bid, and it is relevant if, as has been suggested, he's made previous bids in the past. So I can understand if officers are saying that should be an exempt, but that relates directly to outcome sought 1, and perhaps I'm happy to leave this to the debate at the end, but I think we might need to go into exempt, because I think if officers have information about that, we do need to hear it.
Okay, I agree. We've made a ruling. We're going to move on, but we will have the debate. And if councillors want to go into part 2, as I said to you at the very beginning, I've got no problem going to part 2, but obviously that means anything after that, and we will make sure that it's left to the end. We're not going to suddenly go into part 2 yet, but anything after that obviously will not be in the public domain. Okay.
Point of clarification. Is committee able to go into part 2 briefly to discuss that item and then return to part 1?
Because we'll have to check everybody out, come off YouTube, and then come back on again. Because we did discuss that. Yeah, so we are in the middle of questions and not debate. And I did exactly ask that question when we had Chair's briefing about going into part 2 to come back out again, and it's not something... We can have that conversation if we want to, but this isn't a debate, although it's turned into one. It's questions. So if we are happy to move on at this stage, and if you want to come back to this in the debate section and go to part 2, I am more than happy. I've always said I've not got a problem with going into part 2. Excuse me. Right, I'm going to move it on because I think we've done more than what I said I was going to try and do for Mr Breeden. So thank you for your time. So Councillor Cope. So questions for Councillor Cope. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Are you opposed to all asset sales or just to this one?
I'm not sure that comes within the scope of this calling.
Chair, the petition that has been raised... Oh, sorry.
Just 1 second, because what I don't want to be doing is accused of being political, so I'm going to listen to the officers. Thank you. Okay, the administrative officer is happy for you to answer that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to answer the question. My view is that this council is not going to exist in 2 years' time. I don't think we should be making long-term decisions that are going to affect our borough for many decades to come when we're about to be absorbed into another entity which will have a different financial position and different priorities. So my preference would be that all substantial asset sales are frozen, yes.
Thank you. But this call-in in outcome sought 1 suggests you would like Mr Knight's bid to be accepted by the executive.
I don't believe that is what it says. I've said I think the executive should reconsider. The reason for this call-in is that I was deeply concerned by the process of the decision-making of the executive. I mean, frankly, the decision has been probed much more tonight than it was by the executive at the time. Perhaps some of these members of this committee should be on the executive. For me, this is about the process by which the executive made their decision.
Yeah, and this is part of scrutiny, which is, I agree, is a very important part of our system, and it says it in the agenda pack, the executive plus scrutiny system relies on scrutiny to try and improve decisions. And this is a lot more scrutiny than the decision to buy the House of Fraser building got, and that was literally one signature. You there.
Well, it's historical.
Okay. Well,
and I'm sorry.
What isn't historical is the reasons for the sales. So,
and as I alluded to, Councillor McIntyre is completely in her 5 and a bit minutes explained the situation. Okay. I'm not going to let you go back through that again, because you have done it in chamber a number of times, and we do want to have. I'm happy to have a debate about other stuff, but I'm not going to go back onto that.
Can I ask Councillor Cope if he accepts the position of the financial position of the council, and that asset sales are the only way that we can start to rectify that?
Okay. Are you happy to? Because I'm going to give a little bit of leniency because it isn't relevant. But if you're happy for me to let him to answer it, okay.
I did not support the council's budget or the medium-term financial strategy when it was voted on.
Right. So did you have your hand up?
Don't think anything has to be done about the council's financial situation?
I don't think that's what I said. Obviously, all local authorities face financial pressures and they have to manage their finances accordingly. I mean, we're not special in that regard.
I think he beat me to it.
Yeah.
Councillor Mahoney.
Councillor Cope, in your pursuit of democracy for the local residents, can you explain why you didn't reach out to any of the local ward councillors?
Yeah, I think it's fair criticism. And I think if I could revisit it...
But I'd bear that in mind that you just said this is completely non-political, so I'd like that added to it.
Let me answer the question and then you can ask another one. I think that was probably a mistake on balance. My driving reason for this call-in was deep concern at the process by which the executive arrived at this decision, shared by myself and Councillor Thorne. Our instinct, therefore, was to call this decision in. This is about process. It's not about revisiting the arguments for and against the decision.
So you and Councillor Thorpe couldn't email, phone, text, or talk to any of those other members in these chambers at any other time. I know you said it's a mistake, but it seems monumental.
If you think it's a monumental mistake, then fine. Do I think it would have improved the process? Possibly, but I guess the point is we're here today to scrutinise executive process. I was disappointed with the process followed by the executive, and therefore I called in the decision. Could I have reached out to more people in advance? Possibly, and it's probably a learning point for future. I'm happy to take that on board. Do I think it really has any impact on the reason for the call-in, the nature of the call-in, the debate to be had tonight? No, not really.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Cope.
Point of clarification first. Are we discussing the sale and calling requests around Wood End Car Park or the wider process of asset sales? I'd just like a point of clarification, please, from an officer.
So, it is to discuss the Wood End car park, but as a wider thing, because of that, the officers are happy that we can maybe discuss that a little bit further. But obviously, sorry, go on. Point B. Point B on this one. Yeah, so little weight given to represent that one. Oh, sorry, 3, sorry. No adequate answer, that one. So I read it from yours, it'd be so much easier, wouldn't it? Okay, whether the council had considered selling more valuable assets if funds are needed and discretionary services until the move to unitary. So it does cover the Wood End and wider, in answer to your question.
Excellent, thank you. I'll follow up with my question then. Councillor Cope, I'm looking to understand if there's a financial relationship between Deepcut Garage's owners and the Surrey Heath Conservative Party or individual Conservative members.
I am not aware of any.
Now, curious. I see Deepcut Garage sponsors content on Conservative County Councillor Paul Deitch's email newsletter. Were you not aware of that, one assumes?
No, I wasn't aware of that. That is the first I've heard of that.
Okay. And I just find it slightly difficult, shall we say, when also if you visit Deep Cut Garage's website, Councillor Deitch, Conservative County Councillor, is also, as I understand it, creating content on the website, on the blog.
If you tell me so, I don't regularly visit the website of Deep Cut Garage.
Given the importance in relation to Wood End.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to just carry on. And please do not take this as me rushing you by any stretch of imagination, but I'm just getting them to check, because at this rate, we're going to get very close to not getting in a position to be able to debate before we get to 10 o'clock. And I don't take that as me stopping you asking questions, because that's not what it is. But I wanted to throw that into your mind, that we obviously do need to have a debate as well. Okay, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Cope, for calling in decisions. For those that don't know me, I'm a non-political councillor, and I think it's fair to say that I upset all political parties equally. So as is testated by the sniggers in the chamber. There's been a lot made about the two offers that have come in, and without going into the detail of those offers, one offer is making the car park available but chargeable during the weekdays, and the other one isn't. One of the things that, if I was a member of the executive, I would want to understand before I made that decision is, do we have any influence over the charge rate for that car park? Do we have any influence about it staying in there in perpetuity? And do we have any influence about the safety of the car park, etc.? Because if a car park is free, by its very nature, it then almost becomes a public car park. And I would have thought that we as council would have a duty of care for any public car parks that are within our borough. But it specifically, because there does seem to be we're down to the point of the variance between the two offers and whether that constitutes enough value to see the loss of car parking. My concern is that we have no vision of the cost of that parking and whether or not it would actually help the situation or not, or how it would be enforced. None of us like to park in private car parks where our cars are clamped.
Sorry, we were just debating something else. Go on. To be fair, I'm hoping you did as well, because we were talking about something else.
And of course you did, Councillor Wheeler, and I think the issues that you've just talked about are exactly the sort of issues that I would have expected to be discussed at the executive where this meeting was taking place. I mean, maybe we would be in a better position if you were on the executive to ask those questions. I don't know the answer to them. I don't know whether any of the other contributors do. But again, I would say to the committee, this is an example of the sort of thing that the executive should have considered when making their decision, and they did not.
Councillor Wilson. So I pointed, and that's very
That's fine. Your point was that you called this in because you weren't happy with the process at the executive meeting, but you were campaigning on this subject before the executive meeting.
Correct. I said right at the beginning, I don't want the car park to be sold, and I've been campaigning with residents against that. That doesn't also mean that I wasn't incredibly disappointed with the process that was followed. The two are not distinct. The two are distinct, sorry.
So if the process was different at the executive, you wouldn't have done this call-in?
Yeah, if there had been what I regarded as a thorough discussion of the pros and cons of the decision being made, then no, I wouldn't have called it in, because I don't see this as some sort of frivolous thing. I've never done this before. I'm not someone who calls in decisions all the time. I disagree with a lot of the decisions that this council made. But I just felt that the debate at that executive did not get into the issues in the way that residents are right to expect us to. That's why I called it in. As I say, this is about process.
Oh, crikey. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Councillor Cope, I just wanted to clarify and then follow up with the question. So you were asked publicly, do you believe in local councils subsidising private property investors? And I think you said, no, I don't, but thanks for asking. I assume that remains the case.
Correct.
So In terms of the sale of the car park to the highest value bidder, as I understand it from the discussion we've had tonight, surely that is following due process, and we wouldn't want to consider selling to a car park to a lower value bidder.
I think I'm okay to say that the highest financial value was not accepted.
Of course, that would be moving into conditional offers, which have strings attached. And I think, if I remember rightly, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
If that were true, then conditional offers would never be accepted. I think that, again, what you're getting at is exactly the sort of thing that the executive should have got into in their meeting. The merits of the conditional offer against the unconditional offer. The merits of getting the money in quickly against securing a higher value. The merits of preserving the car park for public use for as long as possible. All of these things that should have been discussed more thoroughly at the executive. That is why we're here tonight.
Gentlemen, it's a lovely debate, but it's not question. And I'm conscious that we're now a little bit more in. I've allowed 13 minutes on this one, so on my trying to follow an equal amount for each person, unless someone's got a burning question they would like to ask of Councillor Cope. No. Okay, so Councillor McIntyre next. You're next. Councillor O'Mahony.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McIntyre. Could you describe the Council's financial position currently, which makes these asset sales necessary?
Okay, can I preface that, because I understand. Can you explain that without doing what you've already done in your 5-minute speech? Can you give extra information? Because we've already had that, in fairness, which I'm happy. I've said on God knows how many times I was happy, and it was very succinct. But can you answer that without going back for everything you've already done?
I can answer it very succinctly, but it won't be airable. So, so that I don't have to repeat everything, we're going to run out of reserves. We need cash now, and we need to sell or generate income so that we can safeguard the future of our residents and the vulnerable services, the services our most vulnerable residents need.
That was really succinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm going to give you a follow-up, yeah.
Thank you. In the absence of the section 151, could the CEO confirm broadly in agreement with the statement that Councillor McIntyre has just made?
You might have to repeat that, because he was just telling me who the next person was, and he wasn't listening, so it's his fault. You want to repeat that?
Do you agree with Councillor McIntyre? It was to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor O'Mahony. Am I allowed to be as succinct as Councillor McIntyre was? I'll be brief. We have significant financial challenges, we know that. And during last financial year, we were under the impression that we were digging into our reserves to the tune of about £2.6 million. That jumped quite dramatically and shockingly to £8 million. So we have gone through an extensive transformation programme which has found around about £3.2 million worth of savings. And that is significant for a small district or borough. There is still more that we have to find, and there is still more that we have to do. And I think Councillor McIntyre referenced the £10 million of capital receipts that we need to keep us buoyant through to the end of the MTFS. I think that's a fair commentary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoff.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McIntyre. I was just wondering if the Council did end up having to issue a 114 notice, which in effect is the Council's bankrupt, like Woking Borough Council had to do. What would that impact have on the car parks that the Council owns, such as fees, ownership, etc.?
So thank you for your question. I think the most important thing to note is that we would have no control over any of that. So any decisions that we want to make as an executive or a council or anyone in this chamber, including the officer's recommendations, all of that control would go. So our residents would not be able to impact that. In order to raise the revenue that's needed to run the council, the council tax would most likely, based on what we've seen elsewhere, go up quite significantly, which would impact everyone. Things like car parks, as Councillor Finan-Cook mentioned earlier, they're not a statutory service, so anything could happen to them. Car park increases, charging increases, they could be closed. There's a myriad of options for essentially every single service that we as a council offer today. I don't think I can give it justice, the impact of having a Section 114 notice applied to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, so next person on my list is Ms. Fard. So, question. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. So I think, as we've already heard, you launched 4 petitions, I think on the 20th of February, the 9th of March, the 4th of May, and then another survey. I'm not sure the date of that. Presumably that was to increase the data scraping you could get from that. Why didn't you just submit the first petition, and that would have been in time to be considered for the executive meeting?
I'm not sure why you're referring to 4 petitions. I've got my petitions in front of me. So the one that is a petition to stop the fire sale was created on 5th of March, and that's the one that I submitted to this council. I had run surveys. Before this petition, I ran a survey to understand what the residents' feeling was about it. I wasn't happy. And then when I realised other people weren't happy as well, and I had meetings with them, I set up a petition.
So just to be clear, there wasn't a Surrey Heath Conservative petition launched on the 20th of February?
Surrey Heath Conservative petition. I can see one. Let me just bear with me a second. A Surrey Heath Conservative petition. I'm not aware of one that the Conservative Association set up. I'm not aware of that one.
I'm not. I'm on Facebook. I don't follow the Surrey Heath Conservative Party, but I'm told it was on the Surrey Heath Conservative Party's Facebook page on the 20th of February.
Perhaps if I help.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely help then. So it's this petition here. It's dated 20th of February 2025. Stop the Lib Dem property fire sale. The Liberal Democrat leadership of Surrey Heath Borough Council are looking to sell off community assets across our borough. The first to be marketed are Wood End Road Car Park Deep Cut, land at Holyhedge Road, Frimley, land to the rear of 361 to 365 London Road, Camberley. More will follow. And it was, it's dated the 25th of February from the Surrey Heath Conservatives website, actually.
I'm not aware of. I can't remember. I'm afraid I can't remember. You must be right, but I just don't remember. And I don't think I have been involved with a petition on the website. Oh, sorry, it's Conservatives. No.
Okay, any more questions? Really? No more questions? Wow, okay. So, in which case, I'm going to stop my timer. Hang on a second. Right, okay, so, Councillor Betton. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, you got off lightly. Oh, there we go, Councillor Lee.
Councillor Benton, I just wanted to double check. Did you say that neither Councillor Cope nor Councillor Thorne, who've called in a decision for involving the asset within your ward, contacted yourself or David Whitcroft? Did that include Councillor Morgan Rice? Are you in regular contact with your ward councillor?
I didn't mention it. I've had no contact with either Councillor Cope or Councillor Thorne on this. I have discussed it with Councillor Rise and Councillor Whitcroft, both in person and by email.
And between the decision becoming public and the call-in being made, have you attended a meeting where Councillor Cope and or Councillor Thorne were present, where they could have asked you about it?
No, I haven't.
You haven't attended a meeting where they were present as well? No. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, I really should get the hang of this, shouldn't I? Any other questions? No. Thank you, Councillor Betton. Councillor Whitcroft is up next. Any questions? Going once, going twice, gone. Okay, thank you. Right, so, following my list. So, oh, hang on, just one second. I forgot to ask, I'm assuming that Councillor Hode she hasn't put her hand up. Okay, cool, that's fine. I didn't want to make sure we didn't miss anybody else. Okay, so that comes to point 3. Oh, hello. Sorry, Councillor Whitcroft.
But part B of this is non-committee members, which strangely I am tonight, asking questions of the above parties. I've just got one. Okay, don't let me be accused of moving away from the Constitution, okay? But as I'm in a pretty good mood because we've had time, you shouldn't do because you're a witness. And I'm not going to let any other witnesses, by the way, any other contributors do it. But because it's your ward, I will happily let you ask a single, or who are you going to ask the question to? Yourself. Because it's an interesting idea. I'm not sure I get much
because
sense.
we've been round everybody, and the only person left we're asking questions of is you. So the only person you actually could ask questions of.
No, I thought this has been taken as. I thought committee members went first and then non.
I will let you ask a question of.
Okay. It was going to be to Ms. Fard, because there's been some confusion about the petitions. I'm assuming that the one we're discussing is the one with about 800 signatures. Is that correct?
I believe that's the one she said earlier.
I wonder, because that petition, as I understand it, from some material which I've seen, referred also to the 2 other sites which somebody mentioned a few minutes ago, including the Holly Hedge site. So there were people who were responding to that petition who were specifically concerned about the 2 other sites. Would you happen to know how many of the people signing that petition were concerned specifically about the deep cut site?
I can have a look at the outcome. Obviously, it's 850 residents, and some of them have made comments on it and have said which of those assets are close to their hearts. So I've seen that. I've sent the detailed outcome to the Democratic Services, and you also have got their responses as well. So that was, other councillors have it definitely. They had it yesterday, I believe. So it does mention, it does show their comments, and some of them have mentioned Deep Cut, some of them have mentioned Holly Hedge Road, but I think there's an overwhelming evidence that Deep Cut residents were unhappy about the sale.
That's very kind. So it's a bit disingenuous to suggest that the full 800 were concerned about deep cut specifically, because of course a lot of people were concerned about the Holly Hedge site in particular because of the trees and so forth, understandably. So I am a bit concerned about the numbers. I don't really think it's the role of our democratic services to sift the petition in that way. But as I say, I think it is concerning that the 3 sites were included in that particular petition. And if I must ask another question, it would be, are you happy with that?
Are you happy with what?
The fact that there are 3 sites involved in the 800 signatures as opposed to just the 1. Thank you.
What matters to me is that the sale of Wooden Road car park was included in the petition, and people knew that and signed the petition. So that makes the concern valid. People who came here at the exec meeting, where some of them knew that Holly Hedge Road open space was not included on the agenda, but in any case they attended outside the council's premises, showing their support for our objection to the sale of Wooden Road car park. So I think there is a collective unhappiness from the residents about the whole process of sale of these assets.
Okay, thank you. Right, so that does now take us on to...
Chair, I have a point of clarification. It's in particular about the Surrey Heath Conservative position from the 20th of February. I've just looked up, Ms Fard did indeed publicly share the Conservatives' petition specifically on Wood End Road back on the 20th of February. Have your say on this important issue?
Was there a question, or that was a statement?
It was a point of clarification following her non-recollection of the petition.
Did you want to answer?
Thank you for reminding me of my social media post. I seriously don't recall that, but I don't think it's relevant anyway, because we have a petition before this council and residents expect the council to consider that petition. Whether there was another petition which wasn't submitted to this council, I think that's an irrelevant point. I don't even know if people have signed that or not, or how many people have signed it, or who set it up.
I think with due respect, it is relevant because it's a petition in relation to Wood End Road, unless we're classing it as historical.
I don't see the relevance.
Okay, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if we could check with the officers on the relevance. I have to say, I think we are digressing into areas of mudslinging and political ping-pong again, and I think it would be really useful to move on with the debate.
No, I was just about to. That's my fault for being really nice to Councillor Whitcroft. I won't do it again. Not be nice to you. Okay, right, so we're going to go to item 3, third attempt. Right, so we're going to sum it up. So that's, basically this works. Councillor Cope goes first, Councillor Farnan Cook goes second. Now, there are no time limits on this. That doesn't mean I'm going to let you, either of you, go on for a long period of time. I think it's probably fair to say 5 minutes is probably as long as you want to speak, want to go a little bit longer. So,
Chair, could I perhaps suggest a 5-minute comfort break for members of the public and the committee?
You can suggest it. Is that a legs crossed moment? Okay. Sorry?
Given you told me off for leaving a meeting previously to go for a wee, I thought I'd better seek your permission
just 1 second.
first.
Right, so I make it 21:08, which I would then mean that's 21:13, because I'm going to make it 5 minutes, so you better make sure you're quick. Thank you. Right. This literally is like herding cats. Right. Mr. Scott, can you tell me when we're back online, please?
Yeah, we are back
Oh, we're back online. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, short break there. Thank you for a natural break. So we go straight back into summing up. Over to Councillor Cope.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to revisit things that have already been said. I think the arguments have been made for the committee. My one sort of plea to the committee is remember why we're here. As I said at the outset, this doesn't need to be a Liberal Democrat Conservative thing. Now, I can understand the irony some people may say in me saying that, because I am a member of the Conservative Party, I am a Conservative campaigner, and yes, I can see Councillor Wilson is holding up some Conservative Party literature. But the fact that the Conservative Party has campaigned on an issue does not immediately make it wrong. And the fact that the Liberal Democrats have campaigned on an issue does not immediately make it wrong. We are here about the issue. It's not about me. It's not about the Liberal Democrats. I can see my phone's already buzzing with notifications from the official Lib Dem Twitter feed calling me all sorts of childish insults. And I know that they said they wanted to give me a drubbing today. Their words. But we are here to look at the process. We're here to say, did the executive properly make this decision? Now, I've learnt a lot more tonight than I knew from the executive meeting. And I suspect that a lot of the points that have been discussed here tonight, the members of the executive who made the decision may well not have known about. Certainly, that was the perception that I took from that meeting. And it's a perception that I've heard from a number of other people who watched that meeting. My intention here is not to be difficult, not to be frivolous, not to cause issues. It is because I and residents have a concern about the way this decision was made. And I think the committee should consider that. Give residents a voice, send this back to the executive, and tell them to consider it in light of the discussions tonight, after the petition which has been submitted regarding the sale of assets has been fully considered by full council, so that this decision can be made with all of the facts in front of us. I hope that you will consider that. I hope you will think very carefully about your duty and role here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Councillor Fine-Cook.
Thank you, Chair. This call-in has been purely political, and Ms Fard is acting purely as a Conservative campaigner this evening, as the imprint on her literature, website and social media accounts prove. It's a shame she can't remember some of her political campaigning that she's conducted recently, but there we go. I believe myself and Mr Breeden have explained very, very clearly this evening how this whole process works, so the committee shouldn't be confused about that. I just want to make one point, really, with regards to executive meetings, in that myself and my colleagues make every effort to keep the whole meeting in public without having to go into part two. So with this in mind, all of the members actually read their paperwork thoroughly and understand what's being asked of them and what the decision entails. We believe it's in residents' best interest to conduct our meetings in public so they can witness democracy, see their councillors working for them, and to understand the workings of Surrey Heath Borough Council. Councillor Cope knows that, so now attempting to present this call-in as a concern about process is rather disingenuous, in my opinion. If this call-in was indeed about process, we really need to be querying why Councillor Cope has been campaigning against the sale of this asset prior to the executive decision at all. And in light of this being a political call-in, I hope the committee can accept the executive's recommendation in the first instance and accept the decision made.
Thank you. Okay, so that means we go to debate. Committee members first, and then non-committee members. I think only Councillor Hogue is online.
Chair, could I seek a point of clarification from officers? You mentioned about getting things done by 10 p.m. For the benefit of members and the public, could you just talk us through, have that process talked through so we understand if we hit 10 o'clock, what can and can't happen?
Yes. Do you want to, because you're probably going to explain it. So one of the reasons why I missed a few of the questions was we were having exactly that debate, because I wanted to make sure we obviously give it as much time as possible. Ms Willis.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the provisions in the Constitution, I will read out the exact wording. So it says, at all committee meetings, subject to 10.2 below, which only relates to planning applications committee meetings, so that's irrelevant. At 10 p.m, no further items of business will be conducted, save the conclusion of the item of business under discussion, and that the meeting will be adjourned to another date if there are outstanding items. So as this is the item under discussion, there's actually effectively no guillotine rule for this item. So you don't have to conclude the debate by 10 o'clock or
So,
the item by 10 o'clock.
For clarity for those in the room and on YouTube, no guillotine basically means we could be here to whatever time we finish it. Now, I am happy to have a debate, totally, that's why we're here, but at the same time, we don't want to go around in circles, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we've got actually a good period of time to 10 o'clock, okay? So I'm hoping that we can have that debate, and I'm not going to suddenly cut it at 10 o'clock, don't get me wrong, but just bear that in mind with the questions, or sorry, the debate. So we're going into debate. Thank you, Ms Willis, for explaining that. And I will ask you to ask any questions you wish. No one, good. Oh, okay. Damn. Councillor Hoff.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to come back quickly on sort of like hearing Councillor Cope's point around the unitary.
Councillor Hoff, sorry, I didn't make it clear. I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, no, there's no debate with any of those people, apart from, I believe, Mr Breeden is the only person, is that right? Can you just check that for me? That's correct. Cool, because Mr Scott's been looking at it as well. Yes, so just for clarity, because I should have clarified that, basically, and that includes Councillor Betton and Councillor Whitcroft. The only person on that, unfortunately, for Mr Breeden is Mr Breeden. Okay, so fire away.
Apologies, my question was actually going to become over to the Chief Executive, just referring a point that was earlier made. So, regards to the unitary authorities, the point was made that we should be holding off any decisions on asset sales or anything until the new unitary authorities were in place. And I hear that figure's being mentioned as 2 years. I was just wondering whether the Chief Executive might be able to give us an update, because as far as I was I'm concerned, from what I've seen, there's no firm confirmation that it will happen in 2 years. There's a lot up in the air. We don't know what's happening with the government and the reorganisation plans. So as a responsible council, we should be planning on the assumption that after 2 years, could be 3 years, 4 years, that we would still be responsible for this, for the borough, and we shouldn't be holding things off when there's a very real threat of Section 114 looming that could be before whatever comes next happens.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Huff. Yes, you're right, and it's a fair question. Ultimately, whilst there is a timetable for local government reorganisation within Surrey, it is not set in stone, it's not set in statute, and therefore there could be some slippage. It's a very ambitious timetable. I think if we were as fortunate as other regions who are working to a lesser timescale, some with a year or 2 years more, or even longer than that, then we'd be in a different circumstance. But there is a very fast trajectory into unitary authorities that's set, and any slippage at all jeopardises that quite substantially. And it would be completely imprudent of us, and I can channel my inner, well, not mine, but I can hear the voices of our Section 151 officer, past and present, that it would be entirely inappropriate and very dangerous for us not to get our finances in order. We cannot rely on unitary status, we cannot rely on local government reorganisation, all we can rely on is our own actions to make sure that we have our finances in order.
Who's next? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to pick up on some points that we heard earlier, and I think it's probably a question for Mr Breeden about the bid made by Steve Knight. So I'm going to try not to be specific about this, but it's just to refer to what's already been said. And it's about whether that bid guarantees that there would be a free car park in perpetuity in Wood End Road. I think I'm right in saying the intention is it wouldn't be free, but also that there's no guarantee that on day one it wouldn't be sold to a property developer for a higher price. Is that correct? Because I think Atia Fard said it would be a car park open to the public, but Councillor Finan Cook said none of the bids guaranteed a car park in future there. Which of these is correct?
Am I okay to answer that one, monitoring officer? Without going into...
Yes, you can answer that as long as you're careful not to divulge confidential information.
Thank you. The bid from Mr Knight guaranteed that it would operate as a car park for a significant number of years, but not in perpetuity.
And would that be with a covenant or something?
Yeah, to be decided, but probably, yeah. We didn't get into the detail of that. There would have been charges, was proposed, but again, undecided what charges they would have been.
Councillor Mountbatten and then Councillor Lee.
I'll let Councillor Lee go. Normally he comes up.
I was just following up. So what we've got is a number of different answers in relation to that. From what I can understand, there are no bids that guarantee that as a car park for any length of time from what I've seen. There are reasonable ways to exit that from the information I've been presented.
Are you able to, pretty much you can answer that question without going into the deep diving?
That's right, and the information was in the part 2, the appendix. So that information was in front of the executive when they made the decision.
Thank you. Councillor Mountbatten.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I believe there's a petition coming up for the full council. I presume that's going to be discussed in full, the same sort of petition. Am I right in assuming that? So if it's coming to full council, why are we asking this committee to pass it to exec? Because it's going to be debated in the full council anyway. I know it's a process, accept that. I know it's a process, but want to understand why we are having a debate now, because it's going to be debated again at the full council. Thank you.
This is a question I've already asked. Do you want to? Someone, because I... Okay. Which, gone, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As the call-in came in, under the Constitution, we're required to deal with it. So it's just the process as per the Constitution. Thank you.
But also to add to that, because I did ask exactly this question, this call-in relates to the executive decision. So whatever we decide tonight, am I right, will go, well, actually, may not have to even go back to executive. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. It's in the agenda, yeah, what the options are based under the Constitution as a result of this call-in. And one option is that the decision is referred back to the executive for them to reconsider their decision. Or not to do that, sorry, just to finish off, it could be that the decision is for the decision to stand as made. So, okay, thank you.
So just for a point of clarity, because we haven't used that word enough tonight. If you go to page 5 of the documents, 3.1 part 4, there's a whole list of different options which we as a committee can decide. I'm ticking off the ones I think that we're not going to discuss, but I will run them by you for you because I'm pretty sure some of those we won't be going down the route of. But so that ultimately is what we will be doing tonight. Now, who was next? Councillor Wheeler.
Thanks, Chair. I'm putting myself in the position of the executive. And there's a couple of things I think that have come up this evening that if I was on the executive, I would have wanted to be aware of before I made my decision. One of those is a better interrogation of the current usage of the car park, so that it is accurate and quantified rather than speculative and hearsay. The other is the provision of a free car park, because if I was a resident of Deep Cut and one offer gave me a free car park and there was £1 difference, for example, between the higher offer, I would want to understand why that really made a difference to the executive and to understand it. And I would also want that offer of a free car park, per se, to be quantified. So what is the chargeable amount? To Councillor Wilson's point, and it's rare for us to agree on anything, to Councillor Wilson's point, could that bidder sell it the following day? And yes, there would be a calculation, but that wasn't clearly explained in the executive papers, to my mind. And then the third matter is it democratically correct to make a decision on something when there is a petition that has not yet been heard resisting that sale? And is that seen to be transparent and clear to our residents? So those are the three areas. For what it's worth, if I was a member of the committee, that at this point, if I was watching from home, I would be concerned about. And it's those 3 points really that are influencing the way in which I may vote this evening, or recommendations I may make.
Thank you for your insight. Who was next? So it was Councillor Wilson and then Councillor O'Mahony. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. It's going back to that point about the live petition and its reason 1 and the reasons for the call-in request. And I guess it's a question just to confirm my understanding with the monitoring officer that the petition process in the Constitution is a non-executive function. So it would be unreasonable to ask the executive to change that process or timetable for a petition because they don't have any power over it. And also, there's nothing in the Constitution that requires any decision to be deferred because a member of the public has raised a late notice petition on it. In fact, if there was such a requirement, it would cause havoc, because every decision could have one political activist or another raise a petition and the council would never be able to make any decisions. Is that understanding of the position correct?
Thank you, Chair. So there is a procedure set out in the Constitution for dealing with petitions. And it isn't it depends on the number of signatures on the petition as to where it's dealt with. The one that we're discussing here had sufficient numbers, so the appropriate place for it to be dealt with is in full council. And sorry, could you just remind me of the other parts of your question?
Yeah, so it would be unreasonable to ask the executive to change that process because they don't have power over that process that's written in the Constitution.
It would be, that we followed the process as set out in the Constitution.
And the second part was the Constitution doesn't require any decision to be deferred just because a petition's been submitted, potentially at late notice like this one has, because if it did require that, it would cause havoc and we'd never decide anything.
That's correct. The Constitution doesn't require, as you said, you're right.
Can I ask a point of clarification, just to get it straight in my head, because you obviously know the Constitution really well now. You've been doing it. So, whatever decision happens tonight, unless we decide to go along with waiting for the petition, it could go, may or may not go to executive, but we don't have to rely on the petition. Now, if we go to the petition at the full council meeting on the 16th of July, which we're going to discuss it at, if by some miracle the full council decides that we want to support the petition that's been raised, which means actually that we really need to potentially re-look at this decision. How do we stand on that? Because obviously, based on what we're saying, that if we tonight decide one thing, the decision could go ahead and then we start the selling of that land, but then we have a full council discussion about the petition, and the petition then suddenly, by some miracle, we decide we want to support that petition. How does that work out logistically?
Thank you, Chair. So, in terms of dealing with the petition, full council doesn't have the power in responding to the petition to refer this decision back to the executive.
Okay.
So I think I've answered the question.
So when we do discuss the decision of the petition at full council, it actually doesn't make any difference what is decided of that petition, because assuming the decision of this committee is for the executive decision to move forward or whatever, that will happen, and whatever discussed and whatever happens with the petition, it doesn't matter what's decided. Is that a fair interpretation?
Yes.
Point of order, Chair.
I'm just trying to get clarity so we all understand.
I think I can help with this, because the petition is about all purchases, sales. It's not about just the Wood End Road one. It's about total trustonomics. Don't sell anything.
You should have a swear jar. Did you want to say something as well? No, you can't. Sorry. Okay, right. So, was there anybody else on the list before Councillor Wheeler? Because I know she. There was Councillor Mahoney. Okay, Councillor Mahoney, then Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back on the topic of the guarantee on the bid that was put in by Deep Cut Garage. The information we've not seen the bids, but the information we do have, I can't see anything there mentioned to the councillors here tonight that gives any guarantee to the residents for this car park. It won't be flipped in 24 hours. There's nothing there, unless there's something not been told to us. I've got the V2V from the night of the exec, the second. There's nothing in it. Comments.
So if you look at the condition, okay, I'm not going to quote any numbers, okay? So on the yellow papers of this paper, on page 19, 1.1 has a condition, and I'm pretty sure, unless I'm reading that wrong, that's got a period of time on it. And correct me if I'm wrong.
I think, Councillor Garrett, you're reading it one way when it could be just as easily read a different way. And the other thing as well is it doesn't give any guarantee of the number of places. And that for me is the bit that as an executive, I would have wanted that detail before I made that decision. I'm also slightly concerned that if we're going to be debating at full council a petition that is already null and void because part of it that ship has potentially already sailed, can we really have an open and true debate of a petition? And I think that's probably a question for the officers.
Oh, sorry. We just had just bear with me 1 second. So we just had a debate about the point, and Mr. Stevens has drawn the short straw.
Thank you, Chair. Very kind. Essentially, Council hears the petition. On the basis of that, the Executive could consider to bring forward a report to change a decision or to modify it in some way if they wish to do so. That is the process that we as officers believe would be relevant in this circumstance.
Okay, now I've lost. Just before I've seen your hand. Councillor O'Mahony, did you, because we went off on a tangent then, did you get an answer or not? Because I was reading it one way, so it could be read both ways.
Not really, no.
Okay.
The officer said we've got guarantees or a covenant covenant in place. But there's nothing in this documentation that says that, unless it's not been presented to the
So can I
council
ask,
tonight.
because you're the only one that can speak, Mr. Breeden, can I just ask you to read clarity on that point? Because I think you mentioned it earlier, but just to clarify again, the conditions of, do I want to call it conditions? Reference the comments to whether go on, you asked the question again.
You can call it whatever you want, as long as it's a legally binding, enforceable document that says this plot won't be flipped. Or won't be flipped, it won't be sold or passed on or given away. And how many spaces, and how much they'll cost.
The proposal or the bid is as reflected in the appendix to the executive paper. So it's as reported there. So if that were to, if there was a need for that additional protection, that would have had to have been a subsequent negotiation.
So there is no guarantee. There is no guarantee. There's nothing enforceable whatsoever. Am I missing this?
Not on the basis of what was offered, no. Just whether that could have been achieved in subsequent negotiations, should that have been the desired route, is a different question. But we're getting
and that's what one of the officers just mentioned. Obviously, we didn't take that offer. If we had taken that offer, then there was a discussion point that says that might be the case. But you're right, we're talking about ifs, ands, and buts and whatever. That wasn't exactly. But that wasn't the bid that was taken, so we can't obviously decide on that anymore. Right, I've ignored you enough. Mr. Nurmalkang.
Dr. Kang, please.
Sorry, it says councillor, so it's
Yes, just a point of clarification. The 850 signature petition, that is for all assets, not particularly just Wood End assets. So we would be discussing on the July the 19th. How can we distinguish between one asset and the other on a petition which takes in account all assets?
That's correct. So when the petition is discussed at full council, it will be as set out in the wording to the petition, which, so as I understand it from memory, it relates to 3 separate sites. So it will be part of the full discussion for the 3 sites, not just this one. Have I answered your question?
Because we're particularly discussing Wood End, so the petition, is that going to be that relevant? Because obviously after the event, it's going to be very confusing to discuss a petition which involves understanding 3 assets rather than this particular asset.
I agree. It will add an element of confusion, but we will deal with the petition as it's been presented to us.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. There's another point of clarity and another, just another thought. The point of clarity is if we do not call in or make a recommendation following the meeting this evening that this decision goes back to the executive, there is absolutely nothing to stop between now and the full council meeting the sale of this piece of land being concluded, because there is nothing to prevent us from completing that sale of land, which means that when the petition comes to full council, it is not really a relevant petition because one of the plots of land has already been sold. And the other thing that comes to mind, and I have once or twice in this chamber over the last couple of years heard mention of the purchase of the Camberley Square and the House of Fraser building. And one of the comments I made at that time was that it was impossible for me to make a decision because I had insufficient information to do so and insufficient time to do so. And if I was a member of the executive, with the information that was in the committee papers, I would be really worried about making a decision with the information that was in front of me following a lot of the questions that have come through this evening and without that debate. So, point number one, there's nothing to stop us. There's nothing to stop us signing on the dotted line tomorrow with the preferred bidder if this decision from the executive is not called in. Is that a correct assumption? And number two, just to be mindful of those that have laid a huge amount of criticism at council members that are no longer here about previous purchases, we need to be absolutely sure that we have all that information at our hands.
Councillor Wheeler, was there a question?
Yes, the question
First part.
was, if this evening we don't say that this decision should go back to the executive, is there anything to prevent Wood End car park being signed on the dotted line tomorrow and going?
So who wants that one?
No. Shall I?
There isn't. Yeah, go on.
Thank you, Chair. That's correct. If this committee doesn't refer the decision back to the executive, then the decision can be implemented. So, yes.
Council, hang on just one second. Yes, sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in specifically on the point that Councillor Wheeler had raised, and I think this is really important. We heard earlier that if the decision is sent back to the executive and a different bidder is selected after one has already been selected, that could potentially leave the council open to legal action from the current successful bidder. So I think that important piece of information needs to be left in the round when we're thinking this through. It's the risk to the council.
No, that's not my understanding. No, so if this committee determines that it wants to refer the decision back to the executive, it's for the executive to reconsider the decision that they made, along with any recommendations or suggestions from this committee. Yeah, we haven't. The council hasn't entered into a legal agreement with any of the bidders at this stage.
Is the current preferred bidder aware of that status?
It's all in the public domain. I don't know how closely they've followed it, but we obviously try to maintain all the, the interest and the executive mandate.
So that's a yes then. Okay, thank you.
Right, I almost got there. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I'm hoping to be helpful this time, Chair. Can I make a suggestion for how we try to find out what the will of the committee is?
That was exactly the next thing I do.
Because we've got the reasons and we've got the two sought outcomes. So if we address them one by one, we could find out what the committee thinks of them.
If I hadn't stopped you talking.
Can I start?
No, that's fine, because this is exactly the next place we were going to go. So so if we go to page 4 on the papers, 1.5, the calling request to sort outcome as per below. So point number 1, reconsideration of the best value judgment used to justify this sale, in particular with reference to the offer made by a buyer to maintain the car park. So, how do we want to do this? Are we... Okay, so on that point, I'm just trying to make sure, because this is all new to me and I've only done it once before anyway. So based on that, can I get a feeling from the committee if they're supportive of that recommendation? Just, I don't want to vote necessarily. Do you want to read it out again? Should I just read it out again? Yeah, so that's 1.51, reconsideration of the best value judgment used to justify this sale, in particular with reference to the offer made by a buyer to maintain the car park.
Yeah,
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I thought we might go through all the reasons, but that's okay. We can jump to the sort of outcomes. So I think, so outcome one would be a duplication of the already extensively debated decision, with no new factors affecting the decision have been presented since the 20th of May meeting. And retaking the decision in this context has no merit. It just represents an additional cost to the council and an additional delay. So I think, as I've said before, I think the correct way to defer a decision is not to allow every single petition to defer it. It's for this call-in procedure, and it's under the Constitution, where the decision is deferred by this procedure being called. And to delay it further, I think, would have adverse outcomes.
So based on that, what we're effectively looking at is, because on page 5 there are obviously proposals in 3.1. We're looking at small 1v, I'm guessing, after reconsideration, the decision maker will either implement the original decision or amend as appropriate. Am I reading that wrong? Is that the...
That's what I'm saying would be an adverse decision. I think that would just be harmful and costly. I think we should be looking, if the committee agrees, and we get to discuss both of the sought outcomes at the bottom of page 4, we then move on to look at something like outcome option 1 or option 2 under 3.1.
Agree with the decision, but add informed agree. So I'm clear that what you're suggesting is, so 1 is agree with the decision which has been called in which case it will be implemented with immediate effect, or agree with the decision but add informatives to submit the decision maker. That's what you're suggesting, is it?
Yeah, because I think we have heard some information here that does raise concerns, but these concerns I think have already been addressed by the executive. But I think it would show that this committee has taken residents' views into account. We could have a couple of informatives, and I'd be happy to suggest them at this point or later if you prefer.
Okay, I'll park that for just 1 second, just to get what I'm going to suggest is anybody else. Okay.
So if I just read from the Constitution, so agree with the decision which has been called in, comma space, in which case it will be implemented with immediate effect. B, agree with the decision but add informatives to submit to the decision maker. Does B create any delay to the execution of the decision? It is unclear between A and B. I think it's probably guidance from Chief Exec or MO as to what the impact of B is. I think it may be that because B is not clear, it could potentially lead to interesting challenges in how the Constitution is interpreted.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Yes, the point 2, agree with the decision but add informatives to submit to the decision maker, would mean that a report would go back to executive.
So the decision would not be implemented with immediate effect, is that correct? It's not.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It must depend on what the informatives are, I would suspect.
Indeed, it will depend on what the informatives are, and I'd also state that property transactions do take time to agree heads of terms and then to progress. So I'd look to Mr. Breeden just to nod or shake his head vehemently. This isn't a quick process, and therefore if there was a decision by this committee to go with small 2 II, that there wouldn't be a delay on agreeing heads of terms or agreeing a sale.
Depends how long it delays it by.
So, based on the, call it a recommendation from Councillor Wilson, I'd like to get the feeling of the committee on what we think about that as a suggestion.
Would you like me to read out some suggested informatives?
Well, yeah, I'd say, I'm happy for you just 1 second, but I'd be interested to see what the rest of the committee think about that as a suggestion for going for either one or two. Any other comments on that? Councillor Hoff and then Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, I was just saying I'd be interested to hear Councillor Wilson's informatives, and that does sound like a potential option depending on what the informatives are.
Councillor Wheeler.
Happy to be swayed by the informatives because I don't actually think the decision will change when it goes back to the executive. That may be somewhat presumptuous of me, but that decision would be being made with the questions that have been asked. I disagree that there isn't new information that's come out this evening, and I do think we've had debate this evening that wasn't had at the executive. So it would depend very much on the informatives for me, because actually as it stands at the moment, I would probably go for point 1 as it stands, that there is reconsideration of the best value judgment, and in particular reference to the offer made by a buyer to maintain the car park. Now, what I'm not suggesting there, and I don't think would be appropriate there, that any further dialogue or communication was entered into with the bidders, but that there was qualification on the information, because there is an inference behind the information, which I don't think is legally enforceable by what is inferred. But I think to have clarity of that would be very reassuring.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the committee, or are we happy to have a listen to Councillor Wilson's informatives? We're happy with that?
I'm happy to listen to Richard, Councillor Wilson's.
Right. Are there lots of words? Okay, that's fine, because I know someone's got to make a note of this. Go for it.
Okay, so there's two informatives, proposed informatives. The first one is to address the point about school drop-offs and pick-ups. So, proposed informative 1, that the committee recommends the council to write to Surrey County Council to ask how they intend to meet their future legal safe highways and school transport duties at Lakeside as the development transitions to completion, particularly given their premature closure of the old Frimley site.
Stop.
That is proposed.
Pause that.
Informative
we
one.
get a pretty good idea what them.
We can get them from council.
Okay, fine. So that's basically school pick up and drop off. That's just okay. Fine. Okay.
Okay. So the second one is about the implementation of the new car park. Proposed informative 2, that the committee recommends the council to write to the Defence Infrastructure Organisation offering to support their development of the car park management plan required as a planning condition, specifically defining the new Mindenhurst car park terms of use to ensure residents' convenience by maximising availability through appropriate churn and time controls, as well as avoiding excessive commercial usage.
Just right, just for the record, I'm sure we all know what the time is. It's 10 o'clock, so we're obviously pushing on through, but I think we're actually getting somewhere. Right, so okay, right. So we had a quick discussion before 10 o'clock. Got here. There are some of you that don't need to be here, but I'm sure some of you want to stay, okay? Unfortunately, Mr. Breeden doesn't get a choice either way. But if you wish to leave, because you have obviously said your piece, and I know some people want to leave, you've said your piece as contributors, which I thank you very much for. You don't have to stay. You are more than welcome to go, but don't feel you have to, okay? I'm not chucking you out. Fine. Cool. Right, so where was I? We were on informative. We got informative number 2. Was there another informative, or was it just those two?
Thank you, Chair. No further informatives. If you want to have more debate, that's fine, or if you want me to just move that as a motion, I'm happy to do that too.
Yes, I know you're not allowed to talk. I know, and bear with me 1 second. Is it a point of order? Because if it's not, you're not. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to talk because I didn't let him talk, so I'm not going to be one side or the other.
It is a point of order.
It better be. Go on.
I think the second informative needs to be. There's a planning implication, I think, which needs to be potentially taken into account.
Okay.
Because my understanding is that once the DIO has handed over the car park to the council, that's the end of the DIO's involvement. For the very reason that the DIO doesn't want to be involved in managing a car park in deep cut. Okay. So, subject to planning regulations or whatever it is, or considerations, that's the word, subject to planning considerations.
I will let you have that purely because you've given a bit more information, which we're now probably going to check on as well. Right, so, Councillor Lee.
I'd like to suggest that we lean towards the first item, which is agree with the decision which has been called in which case it will be implemented with immediate effect. And then I'd like to propose that Councillor Wilson's observations are placed as notes in the minutes, so they're on record.
That's a fair point. If we did that, there is no authority from the council to actually write the letters that Councillor Wilson has suggested in his informative.
I guess we can look for an undertaking from exec members present in the meeting to take those forward, if they fit within their relevant portfolios.
Right.
There's one extra that I would personally add, which I think is very important, and that we look to argue to maximise the capacity at St Barbara. So I appreciate Councillor Wiener's comments about nice greenery and others, but if the car park capacity at St Barbara's is an issue, let's have that just as that note there to look towards maximising capacity within the car park.
I must admit I was drawn, and I say this far too regularly in the chamber, which scares me a little bit. I am minded to agree with Councillor Wilson with his points, but it's not down to me, it's down to the committee. So what do the rest of the committee feel? Councillor Nirmal-Kang.
Adding notes to one makes no difference. It's like basically adding informatives. So I'm inclined towards sort of looking at the informatives.
Okay. Anyone else?
I agree with Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Malbagam. Any more comments from anywhere else? So, in the way of fair, balanced, what about support for Councillor Lee's recommendation, which is point 1 with some comments? Anyone happy to support that?
Sorry, Chair. What?
Okay, so does what,
Chair?
hang on 1 second. Yeah, I saw your hand. So does what Councillor Lee just suggested add to Councillor Wilson's informative, or is it covered within Councillor Wilson's informative? Just trying to.
I think it's covered, and I think the question is whether we go with option 1 to agree the decision, etc., or option 2 to agree with the decision but add the informatives. And I guess the question that Councillor Lee might have is whether if we go for option 2, would that cause undue delay? And maybe the officers can advise that.
So, in fairness, Councillor O'Mahony.
I'm going to answer that first because that will dictate.
Okay, so it goes back to the point, do those two things make the...
Thank you, Chair. So the short answer is I don't believe that it would necessarily cause any delay because option 2 says agree the decision, so the decision can go forward, but add informatives which would be considered, as the Chief Exec said, at the next executive meeting.
So just so I understand, so the decision would go ahead, the informatives would go to whoever is appropriate, officers or executive, and they could be working on them while the decision's already been made?
Yes, that's my understanding, yes.
Okay, that's what we intended, and yeah, I think the committee agrees.
Okay, I'm not sure that all the committee agrees. Has anyone else got any other comments on that? And then I'll come back to you, Councillor Wilson. No? So, did you... Right, so unless anybody else has got any other recommendations for any of the other items, are you happy to recommend that, and have you got someone that is happy to second it?
Thank you, Chair. I will propose that motion as I've set out.
And what I'm going to get you to do again in a minute is I'm going to read it, because we're going to have to vote on it, but you, assuming that we get to that stage, obviously we agree that that will be supplied to the officers, so we can put that in a room. Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Sabi Kang. Before you had, sorry, Councillor. Okay, sorry, Councillor Nirmal Kang. Were you going to second that? Is that what you? Okay. Right. So we have a recommendation, which is go for 3.1 little 2. Just to make sure we're covered, there's no other recommendations. We're happy. That's the one that, as a committee, that is being suggested. Yes. Okay. Right. So based on which Councillor Wilson is now going to read out again, can you just read that out as you said it previously, so we all know that's what we're voting on. Hang on 1 second. I need to do something else. So we need to go back to point. Do we go to point?
Well, I guess it's up to you as the chair. So do you think there's
Do you want
any...
to do one second debate, or do you want to incorporate it in this vote?
Right, yes, good point. Hang on, which one was that? 1.52. Bear with me 1 second. Right, okay, yeah. So we also I'm going to get you to read that in a second, but we also need to consider with the call-in requesters sort outcome for point 2 as well, which is the other point, which was, and I will read it out just so we know, it's on page 4, 1.52. Any decision be deferred until full council has had the opportunity to debate the petition brought in respect of the disposal of council assets. So we also need to decide on that. Do we want, I'm just wondering if because we've got so much momentum on this one, are we happy to agree on this one and then come back to 2? Yes? Okay, right. So this is specifically for point 1.51.
Right, sorry, Chair. I think if we were to agree the proposal that I've made, then that implies that we refuse both of the sought outcomes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. No, that's fine. Yes, you're right. Fine. Good.
So can I suggest you ask whether there's any support on reconsideration of the decision post council debates, basically?
So say that again.
Whether any members are supportive of reconsidering the decision after the council debate, given the fact they'll probably hear new, fresh ideas, blah blah blah.
So what are we suggesting?
I'm just asking whether there's any committee.
Can you ask that? Because I'm sorry. I'm going to get Mr. Scott to do that.
All I'm doing is suggesting to the chair that in relation to 1.5, just asking the committee whether there's any support for a proposal for reconsideration of the decision after the full council debate, given the fact there's going to be new fresh ideas brought up, etc., etc. I just thought it's good to have that in that discussion.
Thank
tonight.
you, Mr. Scott. You said that a lot better than I would, because I would have completely mumbled it up. Sorry, Councillor Wheeler.
I'm afraid I have support for that. As I said, I don't think it'll change the decision, but I don't think all the information was available at the point that it was made.
Does anybody else have the same feelings, Councillor Wilson?
No, I've got the opposite feelings. I think we should press ahead, not defer.
Okay, any other sides, comments from anybody else?
Press ahead.
Press ahead. Is that basically the general feeling of the committee? I'm getting nods from everybody else. Okay, so that being said, we revert back to the informatives which Councillor Wilson has suggested, which I'm now going to get him to read out again, and this is what we're voting on to recommend to the executive, which is basically little 2, agree the decision, but add informatives to submit the decision maker.
Thank you, Chair. Proposed informative 1, that the committee recommends the council to write to Surrey County Council to ask how they intend to meet their future legal, safe highways and school transport duties at Lakeside as the development transitions to completion, particularly given their premature closure of the old Frimley site. Proposed informative 2, that the committee recommends the council to write to the Defence Infrastructure Organisation offering to support their development of the car park management plan required as a planning condition, specifically defining in the new Mindenhurst car park terms of use to ensure residents' convenience by maximising availability through appropriate churn and time controls, as well as avoiding excessive commercial usage.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So that has been proposed and has been seconded, so we need to vote on it.
Could I ask Councillor Wilson to add a third point about maximising the spaces in that car park? Would you be accommodating to that?
I think that's included in proposed informative 2, maximising availability.
Okay, if you're comfortable, it covers that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask again. Are we happy to vote on that, committee? All those in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you. There's nothing else, is there? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the audience, and I'm not calling witnesses, contributors. Thank you very much for your time. I know it did go on, but I think I think it's fair to say we had a very good debate tonight. Thank you very much for your time. Have a lovely evening, what's left of it, and I will see you all in the chamber very